Chapter 43. What are you doing? Ryua looked at Chiyu with some vigilance. Chiyu grabbed Ryua's hand and shook it vigorously. Ryua, you're really a beacon in the dark, guiding me, a lost sheep. How did you know that this is the most suitable career for me? Thank you so much, Ryua. I find that you're becoming more and more adorable. Being a female underwear designer, this is a dream that I've always dreamed of but always felt impossible to achieve. I didn't expect that you would actually help me achieve it. Don't worry, I will definitely not embarrass you. I will definitely become a qualified designer. Manager Lon, then when can I go to the market? The two ladies present were dumbfounded as they looked at Chiyu, who was about to drool, and were speechless for a long time. Ryua had guessed many different reactions from Chiyu, but she had never thought that Chiyu would actually be so excited. Are you sure you want to do this job? Chiyu actually knew that this job would bring him a lot of embarrassment, but when he saw Ryua's proud look, he naturally would not show any dissatisfaction. At this time, when he saw her surprised and unwilling expression, he could not help but feel happy, and said without hesitation, "Of course I'm sure. I love to accept challenges the most, especially this kind of novel challenge." Lanya was older than Ryua by 2 years, so she could naturally see that this man and woman in front of her had an unusual relationship. She said from the side, "Since Mr. Chi is so enthusiastic, then come to the company tomorrow to report. This is my business card. When you come, you can directly find me in the office. I'll have someone arrange a job for you." "Okay, thank you, Manager Lon." Chiyu took the business card in his hand, and waved it in front of Ryua with some pride. "Ryua, if there's nothing else then I'll leave first." Looking at Ryua's face that was gradually becoming gloomy, Lanya felt that it was better for him to leave first. Ryua took a deep breath. Calming the disappointment in his heart, he said, "All right, go back first and rest early." After Lanya left, only Chiyu and Ryua were left in the study room. "Why should I agree?" Ryua glared at him. Chiyu smiled and said, "Isn't this what you want?" "Of course, that's what I hoped for. Don't forget, I'm a gangster. I'm a ruffian, at least in your heart, I've always been. There were so many beautiful women in the company. What reason do I have not to go? Alright, let's go back to our rooms. Aren't you going to supervise my cultivation?" After that, Chiyu walked out of the study alone. Looking at his back, Ryua clenched her fists tightly. "This guy, why does he always provoke my anger? If he wasn't Kirin, I would have punched him already." Chiyu felt great as he walked back to his room. He had always been thick-skinned. His face had always been very thick, and he was also a person who muddled along. He was not worried about what kind of situation he would encounter at work tomorrow. In any case, the probation period was only 3 months. At worst, he would just quit. Ryua originally wanted to play with him, that's all. Since that's the case, then come. I'm a ruffian, barefoot is not afraid of wearing shoes. Just as he walked back to his room, before he could even sit down, Ryua had already followed him into the room. Chiyu found it somewhat funny and said, "Even if it's just entering the bridal room, there's no need to be so anxious." Ryua coldly snorted. Floating up, she directly landed on the inside of the bed. "Cultivate." Chiyu shrugged his shoulders. He naturally understood that when an active volcano was about to erupt, he could not be provoked again. Without saying anything more, he sat down cross-legged 1 meter away from Ryua. Perhaps because of the churning anger in her heart, Ryua's breathing was somewhat unstable. Her full breasts fluctuated up and down with her breathing. From the small fluctuation range, one could see how bouncy the full twin peaks were. "I really want to try it." Chiyu secretly swallowed his saliva. Thinking of the dragon claw that he had just comprehended not long ago, and then looking at Ryua's cold face, he dispelled the idea in his heart. Ryua didn't open her eyes. "Are you going to keep looking at me like this?" If you don't look at me, how do you know I'm looking at you? What are your pair of thieving eyes doing?" Although I can't see it, I can feel the fluctuation of breath in your body. If you dare to fantasize about me again, believe it or not, I will make you unable to be a man in this life. You don't have to be so ruthless. Chiyu subconsciously covered his treasures. Hai Ryue coldly said, less nonsense, cultivate. Okay, I will cultivate. Chiyu glanced at Hai Ryue, and couldn't help but feel a little proud. He had been hiding his strength in front of Hai Ryue, and didn't tell her how much progress he had made, so that one day in the future, he could see Hai Ryue surprised to find that he had become stronger. Once he thought of the possible results he could get from this pig-eating tiger, he immediately happily cultivated. Chiyu closed his eyes, but Hai Ryue opened her eyes instead. The moment Chiyu closed his eyes, she clearly felt the man's breath in front of her turn from scattered to orderly. His body was full of vitality, and domineering breath, like a huge whirlpool, attracted the rising dragon art thundercloud force in her body. Even without deliberately circulating it, the speed of the thundercloud force's advancement had already increased by a lot. This was the first time Hai Ryue observed Chiyu so closely. Looking at this ordinary face in front of her, she couldn't help but feel a little lost. Compared to the first time she saw him, Chiyu's shoulders seemed to be broader, and he also seemed to be more muscular. His figure gradually grew taller, making him look more like a man than a boy. Although his appearance couldn't be said to be handsome, but for some reason, every time she saw him, she would have a different feeling. From the initial disgust to less disgust and then to the current habit, he seemed to be constantly changing. Every time she saw him, she would have a novel feeling. It seemed to be an invisible charm, unrelated to Kirin's breath. It was just that after the combination of appearance, tone, and other characteristics, Chiyu naturally formed a special charm. Even Hai Ryue couldn't tell what kind of feeling this was. She only knew that if it was in the past, when Chiyu said he wanted to sleep with her in the same bed, she would probably have already made a move. But now, she didn't have the slightest intention of doing so. She didn't know when it started. She had already begun to pay attention to protecting Chiyu's dignity. Chiyu didn't know all this. He entered the state of cultivation very quickly. Perhaps this had something to do with his ruffian habit. It was obviously much easier to mobilize 2 thundercloud force with his mind than to mobilize 4. When the thundercloud force completed the first cloud cycle in a short time, he had already entered the state of meditation. Green and red lights hovered in his body. After using Kirin's arm, it wasn't until today that the fire attribute thundercloud force and the wind attribute thundercloud force reappeared. But Chiyu found that these 2 thundercloud force recovered very quickly, and each cloud cycle would produce a clear change. Kirin's 8 treasures. All of them were the most precious treasures in the world. The Kirin pearl could be ranked 3rd. Naturally, he had his reasons. The auxiliary role of Kirin was actually not fully clear even to Xieji. After it communicated with Chiyu's body, as Chiyu's strength increased, its role was also constantly increasing. Early the next morning, when Chiyu woke up from a deep sleep, he was surprised to find that his wind and fire thundercloud force had recovered by 70%. The wind and fire thundercloud force reappeared. It was only one night. It had only been 4 or 5 days since he used Kirin's arm. Chiyu didn't know that the reason why he was able to punch the Dark Level Soul Eater that day was mostly due to the Blue Sea Thunder Pearl. Because the lightning attribute thundercloud force and water attribute thundercloud force in his body were extremely abundant, when he used Kirin's arm, the lightning and water thundercloud force were obviously released more than the wind and fire thundercloud force. The thundercloud sound and fire thundercloud force had a restraining effect on the evil attribute energy, so the panicked Dark Level Soul Eater couldn't resist in front of the overbearing Kirin's arm. After using Kirin's arm, the 9 Blue Sea Thunder Pearls quickly filled up Chiyu's thundercloud force and water thundercloud force, while the wind and fire thundercloud force were released relatively less. Therefore, it was still easier to recover. However, as Xieji said, the use of Kirin's arm when his strength was not enough was not only related to the thundercloud force, but also to Chiyu himself. When Ryua watched Chiyu eat the 14th fried dough cake, she finally couldn't help but say, "You must have been a pig in your previous life." Chiyu was busy stuffing food into his mouth, holding an egg in one hand, and said vaguely, "Then what are you? A sow? Do you want to die?" "Ah? I didn't hear you clearly." Uncle Zhou whispered to Ryua, "Miss, will he spoil himself by eating like this? He has already eaten 14 fried dough cakes, 9 tea eggs, 6 bowls of soy milk, and 7 bowls of wonton. This is almost the amount of food eaten by 7 or 8 people." Ryua said grumpily, "He's stuffed to death." While saying, she also glanced at Chiyu's still flat lower abdomen. This morning, when she woke up, her mood was much better. The reason was very simple. Last night's cultivation was actually comparable to her previous 3 or 4 days of full-strength cultivation. The auxiliary effect of Kirin's aura on the Zodiac Guardian seemed to be stronger than last time. The improvement in strength naturally made the Tyrannosaurus Rex feel a lot more comfortable. Last night's matter no longer bothered with Chiyu, and even took the initiative to ask him what he wanted to eat. In terms of food, Chiyu was definitely a traditional Easterner. He didn't like to drink milk, but preferred the traditional breakfast of soy milk, fried dough cakes, and tea eggs. When he was in the Sun Nation, he hadn't had a good day. Now that he was back, how could he not eat? Besides, he didn't have to pay for breakfast. When Chiyu swallowed the 10th tea egg and drank the 7th bowl of soy milk, he said contentedly, "There's only one word to describe this feeling. Our Yan Huang country's food is still more to my taste. The food in the Little Sun Nation is really disgusting." Ryua snorted and said, "I'm going to work. I'll get Uncle Zhou to send you to the company later. But this is also the only time I'll let you know the way. When I get back, I'll get someone to buy you a bicycle. You can ride it to work every day. It's also a form of exercise." After saying that, she left without looking back. Today, Ryua was wearing a sky blue professional suit and a pair of gold-rimmed glasses. If Chiyu didn't know her well, he would definitely think that she was a high-ranking white-collar worker. He had to admit that Ryua in uniform was extremely attractive to any man. But roses had thorns, and they were dragon thorns. "Chiyu, why do you eat so much?" After Ryua left, Uncle Zhou sat down beside Chiyu. Chiyu laughed and said, "Teacher Zhou, I'm still growing. If I don't eat more, how can I get more nutrition? Let's go, I'll have to trouble you to send me. Is Fengya Company far?" Uncle Zhou thought about it and said, "It's okay, about 30 kilometers. F*ck 30 kilometers. Then why did she ask me to ride there? Doesn't she know that riding a bicycle is not good for the lower part?" Uncle Zhou smiled and said, "That refers to ordinary people, but you are not. Miss is right. It's always good to exercise more." Although Chiyu also thought that Fengya Women's Underwear Company, Limited should not be small, when Uncle Zhou drove him to a 30-story building, he was still full of surprise. "Uncle Zhou, don't tell me that this building belongs to Fengya." Uncle Zhou smiled and said, "To be precise, it belongs to Longyu Group. Miss also works here. I thought she would come with you, but I didn't expect that she would ask me to send you alone. Because Fengya is all women, they are arranged to be on the 26th to 29th floors. Below them are the other companies of the group. The 30th floor is the office of the group's senior management, and ordinary people can't go up. Miss is there. Take this business card. Mrs. phone number is here. You can call her if you need anything." Chiyu took the plain white business card and said with a lascivious smile, "Teacher Zhou, your last sentence is very ambiguous." Uncle Zhou was stunned at first, but then immediately understood and scolded with a smile, "Kid, your head is full of semen." Chiyu smiled and said, "I also want to, but it's impossible. Thanks, Teacher Zhou." After saying that, He got out of the car and tidied up his only decent clothes and went to the Longyu building. Today was his first day at work. In order to leave a good impression on the beauties of Fengya Group, Chi-Yu specially found a shirt that Hai Ryua bought for him not long ago and paired it with a pair of jeans to work. In his opinion, he was dressed very formally, but he immediately became an exception when he entered the Longyu building. Needless to say, the women were different. From entering the building to getting on the elevator, all the male staff he saw were wearing well-ironed suits, and all of them looked very hurried, as if they were very nervous about work. Compared with them, Chi-Yu was more like a sightseeing than a job. F***ck. Do I have to dress so formally? Chi-Yu secretly thought in his heart and directly pressed the number 26 on the elevator. He was the only one in the elevator. When the elevator door was about to close, a clear and somewhat urgent voice came. Wait a minute. Chi-Yu quickly pressed the button to open the door, and a figure rushed into the elevator with a fragrant wind. Thank you. Chi-Yu looked at the person who rushed into the elevator, and the other party was also looking at him. It was a girl who didn't seem to be much older than Chi-Yu. She wore a pink mid-length skirt that made her look like a lady, and a white shirt with a large collar. The collar of the shirt was laced with lace, revealing a bit of her fair skin, but not much. It was a very conservative attire. Her hair was very long, and even if it was combed in a single way, it could reach her waist. It was Chi-Yu's favorite long hair. It was exquisite. Although it was not extremely beautiful, it looked very pleasing. Chi-Yu calculated in his heart and immediately calculated that she was about the level of desire to impulse. She was a very good little beauty. The girl was also looking at him. She seemed to be a little curious about Chi-Yu's dress. Hello, thank you for your help. Please press the button for the 26th floor. Hey, why are you also on the 26th floor? Did you press the wrong button? Chi-Yu maintained a smile on his face and said, No, we did not press the wrong button. I also want to go to the 26th floor. It seems that we are really fated. After interacting with Su Dong, Chi-Yu increasingly found that maintaining a smile in front of a beautiful woman was definitely a very good way. As he met more and more beautiful women, he had already become somewhat immune. His hooligan habits also gradually changed from being exposed to being restrained. On the way here, he had thought clearly that today was his first time coming to work, so he must leave a good impression on the female staff of Fengya. No matter what, he still had 3 months and there was still a lot of time. Oh, then you must be our Fengya's client. The girl suddenly said. Chi-Yu shook his head and said, No, I am here to work. What? You said you are. Work. My position is a designer. Chi-Yu said in his heart. Here it comes. Fortunately, he was mentally prepared. The girl's gaze gradually changed, and Chi-Yu could clearly feel it. She seemed to be looking at a pervert and could not help but smile and said, Don't worry, I did not come down from the back mountain, and I am not a pervert. My sexual orientation is very correct. Do you think that men cannot be women's underwear designers? Fengya is now moving towards internationalization, so we need to add in our men's vision and more fresh elements, so that we can occupy a larger share in the market. Therefore, your company hired me to be a designer. He still remembered the general meaning of Ryue's words yesterday, and now it was a good time to show off. The girl listened to Chi-Yu's words, and the expression on her face relaxed a little and said, Don't misunderstand, I have no other intention. Welcome to join Fengya, we will be colleagues from now on. While saying that, she stretched out her right hand to Chi-Yu. Chi-Yu was somewhat reluctant to let go of her soft little hand, but for the sake of his future, he tried his best to reduce the amount of time he held her hand. With a tone that he thought was very gentlemanly, he said, Thank you. Ding. The elevator was very fast, and had already arrived at the 26th floor. The girl smiled and said, My name is Lulu, I am from the company's administrative department. If you need any help in the future, you can come to me. Okay, Chi-Yu said, but his eyes were already staring straight. Is this a women's underwear company? Going up to the 26th floor, the first thing he saw was an extremely spacious hall. At the position closest to the elevator, there was a front desk, and behind it were two eye-pleasing female receptionists. This was naturally not the reason why he was surprised. What surprised him was that although this 3,000 square meters hall was divided into many partitions, one could see a lot of wooden models placed everywhere in the hall. The models were wearing a variety of dazzling lineup of underwear, the colorful colors, and the novel style made Chi-Yu's eyes open. Just like what Lanya had said, there was not a single male employee in this company. The female employees were all busy with their own work. Some of them gathered together to discuss, some of them were looking at something in front of the computer. Everyone was doing their own work. All kinds of women's underwear could be seen on the table in front of every staff member. Chi-Yu subconsciously covered his nose. Please don't have a nosebleed. Oh my god. This is simply too cool. If these female staff members directly wore these sexy underwear, it would be even more perfect. Sir, may I ask what can I do for you? A voice awakened Chi-Yu from his sluggishness. Lulu had already disappeared, and the one who spoke to him was a female receptionist. The standard smile on her face had a trace of teasing feeling, but there was no surprise on her face. Obviously, she had seen a lot of people like Chi-Yu before. I am here to work. I am looking for Manager Lon. The female receptionist was stunned for a moment. What did you say? Work? You? Chi-Yu took a deep breath, and hurriedly calmed down his agitated mood, revealing a trace of a smile. He said, Yes, I am the new underwear designer. May I ask if Manager Lon is here? After the female receptionist fell into a sluggish state for 2 seconds, she said somewhat absent-mindedly, Here, wait a moment. She picked up the phone in front of her, and simply pressed a few buttons. The other female receptionist beside her looked at Chi-Yu with a completely different gaze. Chi-Yu secretly smiled bitterly in his heart. I can't possibly explain to them one by one, right? Whatever, let them think whatever they want. Hello, Manager Lon, there is a gentleman who said that he is here to work. Oh, okay. After hanging up the phone, the female receptionist said to Chi-Yu, Sir, please follow me. While speaking, she walked inside. Chi-Yu followed beside the female receptionist. His appearance immediately attracted the attention of most of the women in the entire working hall. In this place, men were definitely a rare animal. For a moment, the topic of Chi-Yu suddenly became a topic of discussion. Women always have some gossip. This saying was absolutely true. Although Chi-Yu's skin was very thick, being stared at by hundreds of eyes, he could not help but feel his scalp tighten. In his heart, he silently said, It will be fine, everything will be fine, it will be fine once I get used to it. In order to reduce his own embarrassment, he said to the female receptionist beside him, My name is Chi-Yu, haven't you asked? The female receptionist glanced at him and said, My name is Guaning, the company's front desk. A few simple words, she seemed to be unwilling to say anything more to Chi-Yu, and quickened her pace. The two walked to the other side of the working hall. Chi-Yu saw another elevator. This elevator obviously did not have this one below. No wonder the highest elevator he took just now was to the 26th floor. It seemed that this was the only way to go to a higher floor. Guaning pressed a few times on the password keypad at the door of the elevator. The elevator door opened, and the two of them walked in. The elevator went up to the 29th floor. The receptionist pressed the button to open the door and said, Mr. Chi, you can go straight inside. The general manager is in the innermost part. There is a sign above. Oh, okay. Thank you. Chi walked inside. The 29th floor was very quiet. Unlike the 26th floor, this floor was filled with offices, and most of the office doors were closed. He kept walking until he reached the end of the corridor. He saw the sign for the general manager's office. He knocked lightly on the door and waited for a reply. Who is it? Lanya's voice came from inside the room. Manager Lan, I'm Chi-Yu. Oh, come in. Chi-yu pushed open the door and entered. Lanya's office was not as big as he imagined. It was only about 30 square meters, and the side facing the door was completely made of glass. There were no walls, and it was completely made of glass, so the lighting in the room was very good. Lanya sat behind a wide office table, and her gaze landed on Qin-hai. "You came, please take a seat." She made a hand gesture to Chi-yu, picked up the phone in front of her and dialed a number. "Manager Zhao, come over here for a moment." "Chi-yu, Manager Lan, when can I start working?" Lanya said, "Fengya has always been known for her high work efficiency. Since you are already here, then you can start from today. I will ask Manager Zhao from the personnel department to make arrangements for you. Mr. Qi, may I take the liberty to ask, what is your relationship with Miss Hai? Please don't misunderstand, I don't have any other intentions. It's just that I rarely see Miss Hai interacting with men, so I am somewhat curious." Chi-yu went into a daze for a moment and said, "Me and her? We can be considered as ordinary friends. If Ryue doesn't interact with men, then how is she going to do business?" Lanya smiled slightly and said, "Do you think that Miss Hai still needs to personally go and discuss business with others? What's more, business partners are business partners, you should understand what I mean." Chi-yu shrugged his shoulders and said, "Manager Lan, don't misunderstand, Hai Ryue and I are indeed just ordinary friends." Lanya looked deeply at Chi-yu. Are they really just ordinary friends? She had never seen Hai Ryue have such a complicated relationship with a man. Moreover, according to what Hai Ryue said, the man in front of her was currently living in the Dragon Field courtyard. Lanya and Hai Ryue were not only superior and subordinate, they were also very good friends. Naturally, she wanted to know more about it. Fengya Company's work efficiency was indeed high. The two of them had only exchanged a few words when someone knocked on the door. "Please come in." Lanya turned her gaze to the door. A middle-aged woman walked in from the outside. She looked to be in her 30s and was similarly dressed in business attire. Although she could not be said to be beautiful, she looked very shrewd and capable. Upon entering the door, she slightly nodded to Lanya and said, "Manager Lan." Lanya smiled and said, "Let me introduce you, this is Mr. Chi-yu who came to work at Fengya Company. This is our Fengya Company's Human Resources Manager, Ms. Zhao Zhuo. Manager Zhao, I've told you just now. Please arrange the employment procedures for Mr. Qi. Everything will be done in accordance with the company's system. From today onwards, he will be our company's probationary employee." Half an hour later, when Chi-yu walked out from Fengya's Human Resources Department on the 29th floor, he could not help but admire Hai Ryue a little more. The Human Resources Department's work efficiency was very high. Moreover, Fengya's employee benefits were also very good. Although he was only a probationary employee, he still had a monthly salary of 3,000 yuan. At the same time, after handling the payroll card, they would directly transfer 5,000 yuan into the installation fee. Of course, the requirements were also very strict. When working in the company, one must wear a suit. Chi-yu was the first person in Fengya to have such requirement. After all, he was the only male in the entire Fengya Women's Underwear Company, Limited. He took the elevator back to the 26th floor. Just as he walked out of the elevator, he heard some noise in the office area. "The man who went up just now is said to be working in our Fengya. My God! There is actually a man who wants to work here. It's so funny." "Yeah, I see. That man must have come down from Beibei-shan. I just heard that the Human Resources Department has already called the Design Department. It is said that his position is a designer. My God! Designer? Could it be that they want a man to design women's underwear? So perverted. Don't say that. I think it's also not bad. Isn't it good to have a man in the company to adjust the atmosphere? Although he is not very handsome, he is not hateful." Chi-yu stood at the elevator door for a full 3 minutes. The disturbance in the office area was actually caused by him. It seemed that this job was really not that easy to do. He shook his head with a bitter smile. He bit the bullet and walked to the design department in the office area. As soon as he appeared, the previous noise suddenly quieted down. Feeling the somewhat scorching eyes, Chi-Yu's face suddenly became a little stiff. In his heart, he thought, this time it is too big. Although he likes beautiful women, but to be stared at by so many women, it is really. Chi-Yu walked to the office area with the logo of the design department. He adjusted his mentality and said to a staff who was peeking at him, "Hello, may I ask who is the design department manager?" The girl who was sitting there and peeking at Chi-Yu obviously imagined that she would speak to her. She suddenly panicked. What did you say?" Looking at her panicked look, Chi-Yu couldn't help but feel funny. Why did she seem to be more nervous than him? I said, "Which one is the design department manager?" "Oh, over there, in the innermost workshop." There was a circle of offices around the office area. The position she pointed at was one of the larger ones. "Thank you." Chi-Yu nodded to the girl. Watching him turn around and leave, the girl patted her chest and muttered to herself, "That really scared me." The door of the design department manager's office was open. Chi-Yu walked outside and knocked on the door a few times. "Can I come in?" After saying the last word, his eyes were already a little dull. "You? How could it be you?" Inside the office, a beautiful woman was busy typing something on the keyboard. Hearing Chi-Yu's voice, she turned her eyes over. When she saw Chi-Yu, she couldn't help but be stunned. Chapter 44. Ah. Chi-Yu, it's really you. I heard from Lanya that there's a person called Chi-Yu who's coming to my place. I thought it was someone with the same name. Why are you here? Wen-Ting stood up in surprise. In the past, when I saw her, she was always dressed in a casual outfit, but now, she was wearing a set of white business attire, which gave her a bit of charm. "Teacher Wen, what about you? Why are you here?" The two of them were not any less surprised than the other. Wen-Ting smiled slightly and said, "Take a seat first, it seems like we have to have a good talk." As she spoke, she walked out from behind her desk and closed the office door. Chi-Yu sat down on the sofa at the side. Looking at the alluring curves of Wen-Ting's delicate body, he could not help but secretly exclaim in his heart. A beauty of the Xingxing grade was truly captivating. Among the few beauties that he knew, although Ming Ming and Hai Ryue were also at the Xingxing grade, Ming Ming was still somewhat inexperienced, while Hai Ryue was too overbearing. The one who was the closest to the Xingxing grade was Wen-Ting, who was in front of him. "Teacher Wen, I remember that you said that you don't like the chaos of the outside society, so you chose to stay in Qingbei University to teach. Why now?" Chi-Yu asked doubtfully. Wen-Ting smiled slightly and said, "I did say that before. But I am a girl and I am alone. Girls all like to have beautiful clothes and a comfortable place to live, and all of these require a financial foundation. Although the treatment at Qingbei University is not bad. But I still hope to have more savings. Indeed. I don't like the trouble that I encounter in social work, but it's different here. I think you also know that you are the first male employee of Fengya Company, and I am a designer, so I don't need to have any contact with the outside world. I only need to complete my own work. It was around 2 years ago, while I was teaching at Qingbei, I was studying a professional degree in design that I had always liked. At that time, I got to know Lanya. She felt that I had a lot of talent in this area, so she introduced me to Fengya. Originally, I had always been working part-time. But recently, Fengya has entered a high-speed development channel. After Lanya and I discussed it, that's why I decided to quit my job at Qingbei University and come here to wholeheartedly design. What a coincidence, I've only been here for a few days, I didn't expect to meet you again. What about you? Why are you here? Just now, Lanya called me and said that you were specially assigned by the higher-up. Also, what happened in Qingbei last time? Chi-Yu smiled bitterly and said, "Teacher Wen, do you also believe that I would rape a female student? I don't want to explain this matter. I'll let the innocent know. As for coming here, it was arranged by a friend of mine. Like you, I'm also alone, so I have to eat. So here I am. I didn't expect you to become my superior." A strange light flashed in Wenting's eyes. She gently nodded her head and said, "All right, since you've come to Fengya, we'll be colleagues from now on. However, I'm really curious why you chose to become a women's underwear designer. This job doesn't seem to be suitable for men." Chiyu helplessly said, "I also don't want to. However, I don't have a degree, and I don't have any specialties. Since my friend arranged for me to come here, I can only do it for now. Manager Lon should have told you that I'll be here on probation for 3 months. If I don't have any results at that time, I'll still have to leave. In the future, I'll have to ask for your help." Wenting faintly smiled and said, "So it's like this. Come, I'll take you out to meet my colleagues in the design department. It should be your first time dabbling in this business. 3 months is not a short time. I think it's better for you to learn in the beginning. Since you've chosen to do it, I hope you'll work hard." Chiyu nodded his head. Wenting opened the door of the office. There were actually 7 or 8 girls gathered at the door. It was obvious that they were eavesdropping just now. When Wenting suddenly opened the door, they immediately jumped in fright. Looking at their appearance, Wenting couldn't help but find it funny and said, "Girls, have you seen a new continent? Alright, don't go back. Come, let me introduce you guys. This is your new colleague, Chiyu. He will be joining our design department in the future and working together with everyone." Chiyu scratched his head and said a little awkwardly, "Hello, everyone. Please take care of me in the future, big sisters." When Ting introduced the names of the employees in the design department to Chiyu, there were a total of more than 30 people. Chiyu was surrounded by them, smelling the fragrance. For a moment, he was confused and couldn't remember many of their names. He only remembered that most of the female colleagues were average-looking, and there were a few above average. However, with Wenting around, he couldn't even pick out a single beauty. The position that Wenting arranged for Chiyu was very close to her manager's office. When Chiyu first came, she was very considerate. She just found a few books for him to study first, and didn't assign any specific work to him. Perhaps it was because they were too busy with work. The disturbance caused by Chiyu gradually calmed down. Everyone got into their role of work. Chiyu really didn't know whether it was enjoyment or suffering as he flipped through the book that Wenting gave him. Looking at the sexy women's underwear in the book, coupled with the environment of the flowers, he couldn't help but feel waves of heat constantly appearing on his body. He really wondered if he would really become a rapist if he continued like this. On the first day of work, Chiyu went through almost in a daze. Even his appetite at lunch was greatly reduced. Perhaps it was because of the beautiful women. When it was time to get off work, others had already left, but he was still sitting there in a daze. He didn't wake up until when Ting patted him on the shoulder. "What's wrong? Still not leaving?" When Ting stood beside him and said with a smile, Are you off work? I didn't pay attention." Chiyu stood up awkwardly. He always had a very comfortable feeling when he was with Wenting. No matter who it was easy to feel a sense of intimacy from her. But Yan Xiaoi once described to him that although Wenting seemed easy to get close to on the surface, she was by no means a casual woman. Wenting smiled and said, Let's go. Let's go together. I understand how you feel now. If it were me, I'm afraid I would also feel very uncomfortable." Chiyu put the book in his hand on the table and said helplessly, "Then let's go." Teacher 1, oh, no. I should call you Manager 1 instead. When Ting said, "You should just call me by my name. We are both colleagues and friends." The two of them said as they walked outside. "Chiyu, where do you live? I can give you a ride." When the two got on the elevator, when Ting broke the silence, Chiyu was delighted. He hurriedly said, "I live near the airport highway. I don't know if it's on the way." When Ting looked at him with some surprise and said, "You live there? I remember that the airport highway is surrounded by villas. It's where the rich people in Beijing live. What does your family do? I'm not rich. I just live with a friend. Didn't I say that I'm alone? Simply put, I've been an orphan since I was young. I don't even know who my parents are. How can I have a home? Speaking up to here, he couldn't help but feel a little gloomy. Home? How can a talented girl have her own home? There was a period of time when he used the dormitory of Qingbei University as his home. But the result? He's a person without a home. I'm sorry. When Ting looked at him apologetically, Qiyu shook his head and said, It's nothing. I'm a homeless person. Since I was young, I have to rely on myself for everything. If it wasn't for the state's relief fund, I might have starved to death. When Ting didn't say anything more, she just looked at Qiyu with a gentle gaze. Qiyu didn't say anything. He let the elevator take them directly to the parking lot on the second floor. Seeing Wen Ting walk out of the elevator, Qiyu didn't follow her out. He just looked at her in the elevator. What's wrong? Wen Ting looked at him puzzledly. Qiyu smiled and said, I'll go back by myself. When Wen Ting was stunned, Qiyu had already closed the elevator door. Looking at the closed elevator, Wen Ting showed a thoughtful expression. A faint smile appeared on her face. She sighed softly and walked towards her car. After leaving the office building of Longyu Group, Qiyu walked alone on the street. After staying in Fengya for a day, he realized that work was not so easy, especially in a company full of women. It was even more difficult to work in a women's underwear company. Hi Ryue, you really gave me a difficult problem. The sky was slightly dark. Because it was time to get off work, there were a lot of pedestrians on the street. Most of them had a relaxed look on their faces. After a day's work, it was time to go home and rest. At the thought of going home, Qiyu couldn't help but feel a little depressed. He had never been home. What was the real feeling of home? He didn't know. He didn't know at all. How he wanted to have a home. A warm home could be his shelter when he encountered troubles. The word family was so easy for ordinary people to get, but for him it was something he could never feel. Just like ordinary people couldn't feel his Kirin ability. Beep, a horn sounded. Qiyu looked at the street subconsciously and saw a BMW 3 Series car stop beside him. The car was silver gray and looked very clean. He immediately recognized that it was the new model of BMW 3 Series. The harmonious lines and the unique double kidney-shaped front design of BMW were easy to bring a visual impact to people. The car window was rolled down, and when Ting stuck her head out, she smiled at Qiyu and said, Get in the car. No, I can go back by myself. Qiyu didn't expect that Wen Ting would drive to catch up with him. Wen Ting said, You are our design department. As the manager, you should do me the honor to treat a new colleague to a meal. Looking at Wen Ting's friendly smile, Qiyu felt a trace of warmth in his cold heart. He didn't hesitate anymore, walked to the other side and sat in the front passenger seat. Wen Ting drove very steadily. She didn't have the passion of a Biaopei, but her driving look was so elegant. Watching her driving was definitely a visual enjoyment. Feeling Qiyu's burning gaze, Wen Ting smiled and said, What are you looking at? What do you like to eat? I will treat you. Qiyu looked out of the car window. Wen Ting, thank you. Why are you so good to me? I think not every newcomer who comes to the design department can have the honor of having you treat them to a meal. Wen Ting was silent for a moment and said, Maybe it's because I am like you, an orphan now. Qiyu's whole body trembled. He turned his head to look at Wen Ting again. You are also an orphan? Although he could only see Wen Ting's elegant side profile, at this moment, he felt a deep sadness from Wen Ting. It was definitely a sadness from the heart. Wen Ting nodded lightly and said, I am a posthumous child. Before I was born, my father had already passed away. When I was young, I never saw a smile on my mother's face. It was only when I had the ability to take care of myself that my parents left me. When she was dying, she told me everything that happened between her and my father. Although I am not an orphan like you, what happened between my parents made me feel even more pain. Maybe it is because we are in the same boat. I feel the same loneliness from you. Since we are both lonely people, wouldn't it be good to sit together and have a meal? Chiyu suddenly felt a strong sense of pity in his heart. I am sorry, I have brought up your sad memories. Wen-Ting shook her head and shook off the tears in her eyes. It's nothing. I have also lived alone for many years, and I have long been used to it. Aren't you the same? Don't think about unhappy things anymore. Before my mother died, she told me that people must look forward. The past is in the past. She only hoped that I can live happily in the future. I will also give this to you. Chiyu suddenly had an impulse in his heart and blurted out, Wen-Ting, will you be my girlfriend? Wen-Ting's whole body was shocked, and she subconsciously stepped on the brake. Because there were many cars on the road, her sudden braking immediately caused an ear-piercing braking sound from behind. Chiyu was also stunned. Even he did not understand why he said such a thing. Oh, I was just joking. What was the Xing level? It was sighing at the sight of it. No matter from which aspect, he and Wen-Ting were not at the same level at all. Chiyu really wanted to slap himself. He was really afraid that the friendship he had built with Wen-Ting with great difficulty would be destroyed because of his presumptuous words. The roar of the horn kept coming, and the cars behind were all urging. Wen-Ting released the brake and continued to drive forward. She did not speak, which made Chiyu feel even more uneasy. Chiyu tentatively asked, You are not angry, are you? I really don't mean anything else, it's just. Wen-Ting sighed softly and said, Let's start from being friends, okay? Chiyu was stunned. Is that a yes or a no? Wen-Ting rolled her eyes at him and said, You know it's presumptuous, yet you still ask? Who knows what will happen in the future? At least I treat you as a friend now. Chiyu was relieved and said, It's okay, it's okay. Wen-Ting was a little surprised and said, What's okay? Do you regret what you said just now? Chiyu laughed and said, I mean, it's good that you didn't say yes to me. Otherwise, wouldn't your pursuers fight with me? It's better for us to be friends who are in the same boat. Wen-Ting snorted and said, I can see that you are not sincere. Chiyu curiously said, From what you said, it seems that you really want me to pursue you. Wen-Ting glanced at him and her beauty almost made Chiyu forget to breathe. How do you know it's not possible if you haven't pursued me before? I really want to see what methods you use to chase girls. You really want me to pursue you? Chiyu looked at her dumbfounded. He and Wen-Ting didn't know each other for a long time and never had any extravagant hopes. A woman's heart was really hard to understand. What are you treating me to? Wen-Ting asked with a smile. Aren't you treating me? Chiyu woke up from his daze. Wen-Ting laughed and said, Since you want to pursue me, how can I let a girl treat me? Of course, it's your treat. Then can I not pursue you? I am broke. Chiyu said with a bitter smile. Of course not, you have just started to pursue me. Wen-Ting smiled and glanced at Chiyu. Then let's eat fried rice. This is more affordable. Chiyu subconsciously touched the little cash in his pocket. Okay. I know a place that makes abalone shredded fried rice is very good. Let's go there. 20 minutes later. When Wen-Ting brought Chiyu to the famous snack street in the capital, Chiyu's heart was relieved. The feeling of being short of money was really not very good. Chiyu. Let's go eat spicy little dragon scabs. It's very cheap. Only 2 yuan. As soon as they got out of the car, Wen-Ting's beautiful big eyes lit up. Okay, but can that thing fill my stomach? Chiyu asked with some doubt. Half an hour later. Chiyu, spicy little lobster is really not enough. Let's go eat grilled fish. It's not very expensive. Wen-Ting wiped her hands and looked at Chiyu with a face full of desire. Well, okay. I'm not full either. Chiyu touched his belly. The spicy little dragon scabs were indeed not expensive, but it was not cheap for 2 people to eat 100 pieces. Chiyu, look, there's ramen over there. We haven't eaten the main course yet. Ramen. It's not too expensive. Okay. Without eating the main course, Chi-Yu was indeed not full. Chi-Yu, the ramen from that restaurant is so little. Let's go eat grilled chicken wings, okay? I've eaten it once. It tastes very good. Wen-Ting was obviously in high spirits. Can you still eat this? Chi-Yu looked at Wen-Ting's flat belly. Corruption and wastage are the biggest crimes. Don't worry, I won't waste it. Wen-Ting took Chi-Yu's hand and walked to the grilled chicken wing restaurant. Alright then, I can still eat some more. The feeling of holding her warm and soft little hand was really good. Chi-Yu was a little dazed as he followed her. Chi-Yu. Putting down the last chicken wing on the bamboo skewer, Wen-Ting's large, sparkling eyes looked towards Chi-Yu, who had just finished paying. Wow, don't tell me you still want more. Why are you more of a glutton than me? Chi-Yu was a little panicked. How can you say that about a girl? Don't you know that girls have a strong endurance when it comes to eating? You said you want to chase me, but you don't even let me eat enough. Miss, can you keep your voice down? There seems to be a lot of people looking at us. Chi-Yu felt a little guilty when he saw the disdainful eyes of the men around him. I want to eat yuan bao crab. It's 15 yuan each. Do you want it? Wen-Ting's voice didn't lower, but raised a little. I am scared of you. I think it's better to eat abalone fried rice. Chi-Yu's heart ached as he rubbed his deflated wallet. Chi-Yu. You don't want more, right? No wonder my boss once said that what men want the most is a woman saying they want more, and what they fear the most is a woman saying they want more. Today, I finally understand the true meaning. As soon as Chi-Yu heard Wen-Ting call him, he was immediately scared. What are you talking about? I just want to tell you that I had a great time eating today. I haven't had this kind of happy feeling for a long time. Thank you for accompanying me. Wen-Ting showed a charming smile. Oh, it's okay. You're welcome. This is what I should do. Impulsiveness is the devil. Why did I say that impulsively? Chi-Yu regretted it. That's more like it. Chi-Yu, there's fire ice cream in Xingbian. Let's go and have some dessert. Chi-Yu was completely speechless this time. Why don't I treat you to a flaming ice cream? Since we're so happy today, let's have a good ending, okay? Wen-Ting looked at Chi-Yu with hope in her eyes. Chi-Yu sighed helplessly and said, Forget it, I'll treat you. Anyway, I still have more than 200 yuan. You can do as you see fit. Just leave some money for me to go to work this month. Wen-Ting chuckled and said, What's with that expression? I don't want people who want to treat me. Let's go. But you can really eat. Chi-Yu looked at her and said, It seems that you eat more than me. Big eater. Annoying. What big eater? It's so unpleasant. Isn't it a big eater? We can both eat more than 1,000 yuan. It's a big meal. However, I really wonder if you're even 24 years old. When you eat, you're like a little girl with insatiable desires. Wen-Ting glanced at him and said, It's better if you're younger. It's better if they're younger. Don't you know that women don't want to age? Frankly speaking, Chi-Yu also felt that he had eaten very happily today. Having a beautiful woman accompany him to eat was definitely a very wonderful thing. Unfortunately, he didn't have much savings to begin with, and now there wasn't much left. After eating the ice cream, Wen-Ting finally didn't have any more requests. The two of them sat in her BMW. At this moment, the sky had already darkened, the night had already spread, and the nightlife in the capital had only just begun. Wen-Ting, don't send me off. It's not safe for a woman to drive at night. I'll go back by myself. Chi-Yu leaned back in the comfortable seat of the BMW and looked at the bright lights of the food street outside. His heart relaxed. Although the BMW 3 Series was a good car, it was indeed a little small for his height of 1.85 meters. Wen-Ting said, It's almost 9 o'clock now. Can you still sit in the car? Are you willing to take a taxi back? Don't worry. It's very safe to take the airport expressway. You've accompanied me for the whole night. I should send you back. Chi-Yu, Are you really going to be a women's underwear designer? Chi-yu said with a smile. You're not discriminating against me, are you? Of course not. It's not that easy to be a designer. It'll be very difficult for you to learn everything from the beginning. You need to put in more effort than others to be successful. Chi-yu smiled and said, If I said that I'm just here to get 3 months' salary, would you believe me? Wen-ting did not answer him directly. She looked at him with a faint smile and said, Do whatever you want. Everyone has their own pursuits. I believe that your pursuit is not to be a designer. As she said, she started the car and drove out of the food street towards the airport expressway. At this time, Chi-yu's phone rang. Chi-yu looked at the number. It was Hi Ryue. What's wrong? Are you looking for me? Look at the time. Hi Ryue's voice was still so cold. Chi-yu frowned and said, Are you going to restrict my personal freedom? Hi Ryue said coldly, No matter where you are, come back immediately. Chi-yu was furious. How can I not go back? Who are you to control me? He said and hung up the phone. He had always been dissatisfied with Hi Ryue's temper. Now that his good mood was disturbed, it was inevitable for him to explode. What's wrong? Your friend? Wen-ting glanced at the phone in Chi-yu's hand. Yes. Nothing. Wen-ting, I don't want to go back now. You drive directly to your house. I will escort you home and go back myself. Chi-yu was in a good mood. After receiving Hi Ryue's domineering call, he suddenly became angry. At this time, the phone rang again. It was still Hi Ryue's number. Chi-yu directly turned off the phone. He did not even answer the call. Your friend is a woman, right? Wen-ting said while driving. Chi-yu nodded and said, Yes. But she is not my girlfriend. Wen-ting laughed and said, Don't you think you are a little overprotective? You don't need to explain anything to me. Hey, why are you still driving in the direction of the airport? Chi-yu found that the BMW was still driving in the direction of the airport highway. Since you are friends, there is no need to be so stiff. You should go back. Maybe she has something to talk to you about. Wen-ting's pretty face showed a considerate smile. Chi-yu looked at her and shook his head helplessly. He said, To be honest, I really don't like this friend's character. But there is no other way. If I go back, then go back. Although he did not like Hi Ryue's character, last time in the Sun Nation, Hi Ryue and Su Dong arrived in time to save him from danger. This made Chi-yu feel much better about Tirek. Half an hour later, Wen-ting drove her BMW and sent Chi-yu to the Dragon Field courtyard. I'm leaving, boss. See you tomorrow. Chi-yu unbuckled his seatbelt and said goodbye to Wen-ting. Wen-ting glanced at the gate of the Dragon Field courtyard and said with a smile, Go back quickly. Don't be late for work tomorrow. Chi-yu smiled and said, Since we have eaten, does that count as me successfully pursuing you today? Wen-ting's pretty face blushed and she said, In your dreams. How can it be so easy? If you want to treat me to 100 meals, then I can consider it. Chi-yu was speechless. He helplessly opened the door and said, It seems that there is no hope for a goodbye kiss. Wen-ting said in a bad mood, If you can pass the probation period and stay in the company, then I will consider giving you a goodbye kiss. Chi-yu got off the car and closed the door. He waved to Wen-ting. Looking at him, Wen-ting sighed to herself in the car and said, He really is a playboy. Sigh, he is still the same. Chi-yu watched Wen-ting drive away before he walked to the gate of the Dragon Field courtyard. Before he could call through the access control system, the door suddenly opened. A familiar off-road vehicle drove out from inside. It was Jida's precious car. The car drove out of the gate and stopped. Master, why are you back again? Jida poked his head out of the window. Chi-yu was stunned and said, What do you mean by back again? Jida stepped out of the car and said, Just now I asked Hi Ryue to call you back. She called you and said that you had something to do and might come back very late. I was just about to leave. It's good that you are back. Come with me, I will take you to see my grandfather. Get in the car. Chi-yu smiled bitterly in his heart as he got in Jida's car. Hai Ryue and Ming Ming were kind enough to call him back, but why couldn't they say good words? It seemed that he had really misunderstood her. Jida's driving was not as gentle as Wenting's. With the roar of the engine, he quickly got on the airport highway and headed for the city. While driving, Jida said to Chiyu, "Master, don't you wonder why our grandfather wants to see you?" Chiyu smiled and said, "What can it be? It's probably because I played a role in this mission, so he wants to give me a reward." Jida laughed and said, "Actually, I don't know. The old man just asked me to invite you over. However, the old man seems to be very happy. Oh, by the way, Dr. Guan has submitted his experimental results, which I don't know whether it was a success or a failure. As soon as he finished writing the report today, he asked for leave from the old man and is now on a plane to Tibet." Chiyu nodded and said, "I can understand his eagerness. If it were me, I would also want to figure out the mystery of my body." Jida said, "Master, I heard from Hai Ryue that you went to work. Why do you go to work? You are so strong, I think it's better to continue to practice and strive to become stronger." Chiyu said with a bitter smile, "I also want to make more time to practice, but I also need to eat. If I don't make money, what will I eat? Do you want me to freeload at Hai Ryue's place? I don't want to live off a woman. The money I earn with my own strength is more comfortable to spend." Jida was stunned for a moment, and the expression on his face became a little strange. "Master, it can't be. An expert like you will actually make a living." Chapter 45. Jida's strange gaze moved slightly and said, "Master, I still have some money if you need." Chiyu interrupted Jida's words. "Your money is your own, I will only spend what I have earned with my own ability. Jida, do you know why I am willing to help your Yen Huang soul with this mission? Because I was an orphan since I was a child, and for many years I relied on state relief to survive. For our Yen Huang Republic, I have deeper feelings than ordinary people. In fact, you should also understand that my ability can't be taught to you, so, I am not your master at all. I have always regarded you as a brother, and brothers should not talk about money, otherwise it will hurt feelings." Jida held the steering wheel with one hand and gave Chiyu a thumbs up with the other. "Great master, you are really a man. F***ck, are you a woman? I didn't mean that. Alright, drive your car properly. When you don't want to call me master, change it yourself. I didn't ask you to keep calling me that." Not long after, Jida had already driven the car to the community where his home was. It was close to 22 o'clock, and the community seemed very quiet. "Jida, won't the old man sleep so late?" Chiyu asked. Jida sighed and said, "How can it be so early? Even if the old man is not busy, he will not rest until 23 o'clock every day. He often said that he should not spend his time sleeping, and while his body is still strong, he should do more for the country." After saying this, he could not help but remember that when Ting asked him today, "Will I only work in that underwear company in the future?" Although there were many beautiful women there, but if he always stayed there, what development could he have? What Jida said made sense. As Kirin, what he should do was to improve his strength. Whether it was to protect the East, or to think about his own future, it was the best choice. Thinking of this, he had some plans in his heart. The two got out of the car, and Jida took Chiyu directly to his home. At this time, General Ji was in the study dealing with some matters, and heard Jida coming back with Chiyu. He walked out of the room. Although they hadn't seen each other for a while, when Chiyu saw General Ji again, he felt that the old man seemed more haggard. He had devoted his entire life to the country, yet he was still so busy in his old age. "Have a seat. Jida, go pour a cup of tea for Chiyu," General Ji said kindly, looking at Chiyu with an unusually gentle gaze. Nor could it conceal the dignified aura of a general on his body. "Uncle, can I call you that?" Chiyu asked respectfully. In front of General Ji, he did not reveal any of his ruffian habits. General Ji chuckled. "It doesn't matter how I address you. If you don't mind, you can call me old man like Jita does. Looking at you outstanding young people, I am deeply gratified. You are the future of our motherland, but I am already old. Chiyu said sincerely, how could that be? You are so spirited. No matter what, he can still serve the country for another few decades. General Ji sighed and said, I wish that was the case as well. Unfortunately, time waits for no man, and my body is not as good as before. Chiyu, I really have to thank you this time. Before Guan Ping came, we didn't know that his research was so important. It could even be described as terrifying. To him, it might be an unsuccessful experiment, but if the results of his experiment were to be obtained by those schemers, I'm afraid it would have a huge impact on the East, or even the entire world. This time, you can say that you have done a great service for the country. Although you are not in the military, nor are you in the political arena, I still feel that I have to invite you over to personally express my gratitude. Chiyu hurriedly said, Old man, you don't have to be so courteous. To put it bluntly, this is what I should do. Moreover, I'm not the only one who took credit for this mission. If it wasn't for Brother Tianhuan's strategy, Computer Soul, Plant Soul, and Jida, I wouldn't have been able to do it alone. General Ji smiled and said, You don't take credit for yourself. Good, I didn't misjudge you. Because you're not from the military, I can't help you get rewarded. However, the country will definitely reward you for your contributions to the country. As long as it's within my capabilities, I can agree to one of your requests. Chiyu's heart skipped a beat. After hearing General Ji's words, he immediately thought of Ming Ming's marriage. If he asked General Ji not to marry Ming Ming to a faraway place, would this old man agree to it? This tempting thought made Chiyu hesitate. However, he quickly dispelled the thought in his heart. He already had other plans for Ming Ming's matter. This was because he knew that Ming Ming's marriage would affect the relationship between the two countries. Even if General Ji agreed to his request, it would probably cause a lot of trouble with his status. Since that was the case, it was better to let him work hard. Whether it was because of his status as the Zodiac guardian god or because of his own selfishness, this matter should be resolved by himself. Thinking of this, he had already made up his mind. Old man, I do have something that I need your help with. Chiyu didn't decline General Ji's reward. One must know that General Ji's words carried a lot of weight. Most people would at least be polite, but not Chiyu. He was originally a ruffian, and he hated those bureaucratic tricks the most. A trace of a smile appeared on General Ji's face. He liked Chiyu's unpretentious nature. He nodded and said, Speak. Chiyu thought about it and said, Old man, I would like to ask you to send me to the military's toughest training base for a month. I don't know if it's possible, but the tougher the better. Of course, I have to eat my fill first. General Ji couldn't help but be stunned after hearing Chiyu's words. You want to go to the military's training base for special training? Did I hear that right? From the feedback that Jida and Tianhun gave me, you are already a strong warrior from the East. Is the military's special training meaningful to you? Chiyu nodded firmly and said, Yes, indeed, I already have some of the mysterious power that the Eastern Guardians have. However, this power is only reflected on the energy level. It has a lot of limitations, and my body is far from being comparable to a real strong warrior. I hope that I can further stimulate my own potential in this harsh environment, and at the same time improve my body's ability. Otherwise, if I face an enemy and use up all the mysterious energy I have, I can only be at the mercy of others. If it weren't for the appearance of my two companions, I'm afraid I would have already failed this mission. Only by becoming stronger can I do what I want to do. General Ji looked at Chiyu with approval. Good. Chiyu, you are more ambitious than I thought. It seems that you already have your own plans. I want to know what kind of special training you need. Chiyu said, It's mainly about the body. I want to learn shooting and some military knowledge. I don't think it's useful for me. What I need is a physical grind. including some fighting skills and actual combat experience, as well as to stimulate my body's potential. This requires a lot of exercise and some professional equipment. That's why I took the liberty to make this request." General G's eyes flashed. "I understand what you mean, young man. You are making me more and more interested. I even want to see the results of your special training now. However, you have to think carefully. The harshest place you mentioned is not something that ordinary people can endure. Even the most well-trained Special Forces soldiers would not be able to last long there." Chiyu stared into General G's eyes and said indifferently, "I don't think I'm a person who gives up halfway." "Very well, I promise you that. When you are ready, inform Jida and I will let him take you there. I will arrange the details for you. But—" General G paused. "I heard from Ming Ming that you are the guardians of the East. I hope that you can build a closer relationship with the country. When the country needs your help, I hope that you can put the interests of the country first." After hearing General G's words, Chiyu couldn't help but hesitate. He knew that he was not only representing himself, but also all the Zodiac Guardian warriors. Ryue once told him that the Zodiac Guardian warriors had to face a lot of enemies. Before they had enough strength, they should try to have less contact with the country. "Old man, we are all part of the Yenwang Republic. Of course, we will put the interests of the country first. But I believe you know that as the Guardians of the East, we have many responsibilities. Therefore, I can't guarantee that I will be there at your beck and call. But when the country encounters a problem that it can't solve, I think the Zodiac Guardian warriors will not ignore it." General G smiled faintly and said, "That's enough for me to hear. To me, you are all extraordinary people. Fortunately, my daughter is one of you. Otherwise, I'm afraid it would be difficult for me to have dealings with you. Don't worry, the country will not trouble you unless it is necessary. After all, the Yenwang Republic is gradually becoming one of the strongest countries in the world." When Chiyu and General G were talking, Jida had already poured tea and walked out. He had been quietly listening at the side. When he heard this, he couldn't help but interrupt. "Old man, where are you going to send my master? The Blue Dragon? The facilities there are really good." General G shook his head and said, "Although the Blue Dragon is our country's ace special forces, it is not the toughest training base. I hope to send Chiyu to the Taklamakan. I think he will be more helpful there. The weather there is extremely harsh, and at the same time, they have all kinds of the most advanced training equipment in our country." Hearing his father mention this place, Jida's expression changed. There was even a glimmer of fear in his eyes. "Taklamakan. Old man, this," General G smiled and said, "Don't worry, I will arrange everything. You don't have to worry about safety. Chiyu, take this. If you need anything in the future, you can use this to deploy no more than 100 people to any unit below the army." As he spoke, he took out something from his pocket and handed it to Chiyu. Chiyu subconsciously took it. When he looked closely, he saw that it was a very small badge. The badge was silver, but the strange thing was that there was no pin on it. It looked more like a token. On one side of the silver badge was the national emblem of the Yenwang Republic. On the other side there were 4 animals carved from white jade. He didn't need to look carefully to see that the 4 animals were the 4 mythical beasts of ancient Yenwang legend: the azure dragon, the black tortoise, the white tiger, and the vermilion bird. Seeing this token, Jida's pupils shrank. He secretly took a deep breath, but he didn't say anything. General G smiled and said, "All right, it's getting late. Jida, send Chiyu back. Chiyu, if you need help from the country in the future, you can directly find me through Jida." Chiyu stood up and said goodbye to this respectable elder. He left this inconspicuous military zone that was home to God knows how many generals. "Jida, does this token have any special meaning? You haven't said a word since we came out?" Chiyu couldn't help but ask when the off-road vehicle drove on the capital's expressway. Jida took a deep breath and said, "It's not just special. Do you know? This token is second only to the Yen Huang token in our country. Only soldiers of my father's rank can use it. It can be said to be the highest token in the military. Don't underestimate what my father said. Although there are only 100 of them, there are no restrictions on the type of soldiers. Chiyu was dumbfounded. You mean I can use this token to deploy 100 Special Forces soldiers? Jida rolled his eyes and said, Can't you think a little further? 100 units could also be 100 airplanes or 100 tanks. These are all within the authority of the token. I really don't understand why my father would give you the 4 mythical beasts token. It's really hard to understand. Isn't he afraid of making mistakes? Chiyu didn't understand either. Looking at the token in his hand, he began to have all sorts of complicated thoughts. General Ji must have some ulterior motive for giving him such a powerful token. Was he trying to win him over? There didn't seem to be a need for that. She was already very respectful towards him, but why was that? Jida's face was very solemn as he drove. Master, you know that there are only 2 possibilities for the 4 mythical beasts token to be given to ordinary people. One is that the country is in danger, and the holder can use it to lead the Yen Huang elites to carry out special missions. But now it seems that this is obviously impossible. Our country's current development direction is to build a harmonious society. Peace and development are the main themes. Chiyu asked, What's the other possibility? Jida turned his head and looked at Chiyu. Chiyu clearly saw the hesitation in his eyes, but Jida still said, The other is to avoid death. Avoid death? What do you mean? Chiyu had already vaguely understood in his heart. Jida sighed and said, My father knows that it is unlikely that you will use it to mobilize the army, but he still gave it to you. I'm afraid this is his purpose. Perhaps it is because he has a premonition. The 4 mythical beasts token can also be called the death exemption token in our Yen Huang Republic. This is also the reason why only senior officials like the old man can have it. If the holder makes any major mistakes, no matter how big the mistake, as long as he has this token, he will be spared from death once. Hearing Jida's words, Chiyu suddenly felt enlightened. He suddenly understood that this was the real reward that General Ji had given him. He didn't know whether the old man had a premonition or was preparing for a rainy day, but he had already accepted this kindness. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but recall what General Ji had said just now. He was already old, and his energy was no longer as strong as when he was young. From now on, it would be the world of the young. Didn't General Ji give him this token to tell him that no matter how bumpy the road ahead would be, no matter how bold the things he would do in the future, as long as it was for the benefit of the country, then the country would always stand on his side? This token was very, very important. Its significance was reflected in the country's trust in the Guardians of the East. It could also be said to be a special pardon for the Guardians of the East. With a smile, Chiyu carefully put the 4 mythical beasts token into the Kirin bead and said, What about the Taklamakan? That should be the name of the desert. I saw that you seemed to be a little wary of this place just now. Jida smiled bitterly and said, It's not just wary. There can only be one word to describe it, and that is hell. Chiyu was stunned. You don't have to be so exaggerated. Aren't you just scaring me and not letting me go? Jida shook his head and said, Of course, that is indeed the best place to train people. Master, I'm not scaring you. I'm just letting you be mentally prepared. It's precisely because I've been there that I have a very deep impression of it. Chiyu listened to him. His interest was immediately aroused. Then tell me, what's so scary about this hell that you mentioned? Jida said, The Taklamakan is one of the most secretive military bases in our country. I can't tell you the specific situation inside. When you get there, you can see it with your own eyes. However, you can only see it. You can't bring anything there with your memory. When you leave there, you must forget everything there. What I can tell you is that the training in the Taklamakan is divided into 3 stages. Those who can go to the first stage of training there are already the elites of the various special forces. However, those who can pass the first stage are less than 1/10. And I, when I was there, only passed the first stage and was eliminated in the second stage of training. I remember very clearly that among our elite group, only one person really entered the third stage of training. And that person was Huang Hun, one of the 4 captains of the Yen Huang Hun. It was said that he was the 14th person in history to completely pass the 3 stages of the test. And of the 14 people who passed, 7 have now sacrificed their lives for the country, and the remaining 7, without exception, have become the pillars of the country. Do you still remember the diamond medal I told you about? No matter how much a person has contributed to the country, if he doesn't pass the 3rd stage of the Taklamakan, he can't get the diamond medal. Now you should understand how difficult the conditions there are. Chiyu took a deep breath. Of course, he knew how his physical condition was compared to Jida's. Jida's words were indeed not to scare him, but to remind him that it was not a simple training place, but a real hell. Jida continued, when the Taklamakan military base was first established, some things weren't perfect enough. As a result, the first batch of elites who went there for training suffered a lot of injuries. Some people even went crazy because it was too hard, and some died because their bodies couldn't bear it. It was because of that incident that the country's higher-ups were alarmed, and the military base was temporarily closed. After nearly 10 years of hard work, all the training equipment and various rescue measures in the base were perfected before it was reopened. Now, it can be said to be the harshest military base in the world. Master, if you really decide to go there, your body isn't the problem, what's important is your will. Although the rescue measures are very perfect, if your will can't withstand the pressure there, then it will have a very big negative impact on your life. So, I hope you think carefully before making a decision, and don't be rash. It would be impossible to say that Chi-Yu didn't hesitate at all. However, his hesitation only lasted for a moment. He thought of Ming Ming, thought of the future of the Zodiac guardian god warriors, thought of his promise to the plant soul to protect her, and thought of his loneliness. He suddenly wanted to vent, and the Taklamakan seemed to be the best place to vent. Xieji had told him many times that if Kirin wanted to improve his strength quickly, he had to constantly stimulate his own potential. Only by wandering on the edge of life and death could he understand the true meaning of Kirin's ability. Although his current cultivation speed was not slow, his understanding of Kirin's ability was very poor. Kirin's bead could only help him improve the speed of Thundercloud Force, but it couldn't help him integrate Thundercloud Force with Kirin's ability. The condition of his body was indeed too poor. Only by making his body stronger would he be able to withstand more energy. Only then would he be able to make a qualitative leap in his strength. Thinking of this, Chi-Yu nodded firmly and said, "If I don't go, I will never be able to understand the feeling of hell. Wicked. Remember, your master is a real man." Jida's body obviously trembled. He was silent. There was only the moving roar of the engine in the off-road vehicle. Jida silently took out a pack of cigarettes from his pocket. He shook it slightly and threw one to Chi-Yu. He also held one in his mouth. Jida silently fished out a box of cigarettes from his pocket. With a light shake, he tossed a cigarette in front of Chi-Yu and held one in his mouth. Jida silently took out a pack of cigarettes from his pocket. He shook it slightly and threw one to Chi-Yu. He also took one. "Master, do you know? I haven't smoked for a long time," Jida said quietly. Chi-Yu took a deep breath of the fragrant smoke and said, "Because you don't need anesthesia. A man who doesn't smoke or drink is not as good as a dog. This is because a man is born. He needs to bear a lot of responsibilities. Cigarettes and alcohol are just a way to anesthetize himself. When it's time to anesthetize, anesthetize. But sometimes a man also needs to stay awake." Jida nodded. He said, "Today I smoked again. It's because I misjudged a person. The first time I saw you, The impression you gave me was very simple. It can be summed up in 5 words: a parasite of society. Chi-Yu laughed self-deprecatingly. That's how it is. I live on the state's relief. Although I'm still young, I don't have any ambition. Am I not a parasite? No, you're not. Jida suddenly roared with some excitement. His breathing was a little hurried. He slapped the steering wheel hard. Master, you're not. From the moment you attacked me with your fist, locked on to me and knocked me to the side, I knew you're not. It's not because of how strong your ability is, but because of the momentum you showed at that moment. At that moment, I clearly felt that you are not a person who gives up on yourself. You have a stronger self-esteem than ordinary people. You have the belief to pursue strength. You are a real man, a man worthy of my respect. That's why I recognized you as my master. I want to use you as an example. Although I'm older than you, every time I call you master, it's from the bottom of my heart. You're a bit jealous. You're my brother, why are you saying this? Although his mouth was joking, Chi-Yu already felt his eyes were a little warm. Master, when are you going there? Jida stepped on the gas. Tomorrow. Since I've already decided, why wait any longer? I'll tell Ryua. Make the arrangements and pick me up at Dragon Field Courtyard tomorrow. Okay, tomorrow it is. I'm looking forward to your good news. Master, you have to remember as long as you have the belief not to give up, no matter what difficulties you encounter, you can rush through. Dragon Field Courtyard was quiet. At this time, it was already past 23 o'clock. Breathing in the courtyard's fresh air, Chi-Yu walked back to the villa. He didn't want to disturb others, so he quietly went back to his room. As soon as he opened the door, he smelled a familiar fragrance. The light in the room was not turned on, but he saw a faint white light. Ryua's familiar and domineering dragon aura filled the entire room. She was wearing loose pajamas, sitting cross-legged on his bed. Her long hair was scattered behind her. In the silence, she looked a little more gentle and beautiful. Although the pajamas were loose, they couldn't hide her full and delicate body. Her proud twin peaks propped up the top, looking very seductive. Chi-Yu carefully swallowed his saliva. Sexual fantasies inevitably appeared. He thought to himself, if Ryua wasn't so bad-tempered, she would definitely be a stunner. You still know to come back? What do you think this place is? A hotel? Ryua suddenly opened her eyes and stared at Chi-Yu with eyes as bright as stars. Chi-Yu awkwardly sat down in front of her. Ryua, I'm sorry, I didn't know that you called because Jida came. Actually, I already came back, and just happened to meet Jida at the door, so I left with him. Ryua frowned and said, Chi-Yu, don't get too close to the officials. You have to understand we, the Guardian of the East, have our own responsibilities. Is today's work going smoothly? When she said the last sentence, Chi-Yu unexpectedly caught a trace of a smile in her eyes. He couldn't help but snappily said, Don't you want to see me make a fool of myself? Speaking of work, I want to discuss something with you. Ryua indifferently said, What? Regret? It's only been a day and you're already backing down? Chi-Yu snorted and said, Why would I back down? But I want to ask for a leave from you. I'm going out for a period of time, about a month. I'll go over to work when I come back. Ryua was a little surprised and said, You're going out? Where are you going? Chi-Yu said, Today I met Jida's father. With your ability, I don't think you need me to tell you what kind of person he and Mingming's father is. Because of our help to Yen Huang's soul last time, General Ji asked me to make a request. I want to ask him to go to the Special Forces training place to train myself for a month. What do you think? Ryua stared at Chi-Yu as if she just met him today. Did I hear wrongly? When did our ruffian Kirin change his nature and learn to improve himself? Chi-Yu blushed and said, Why? Can't I improve myself? Didn't you say that Kirin's potential needs constant training to improve? This is a good opportunity. I'm also a part of the Zodiac Guardian God. Do you think I want to be a hindrance to you? There's still more than a month before the conference. Although I know that I can't make much progress in such a short time, I still want to try and see if I can become stronger. Ryue was silent, but her eyes were still looking at Chiyu. Chiyu felt a little uncomfortable under her gaze. What? I'm asking for your opinion. Even if you don't agree, you should at least say something. Ryue suddenly smiled, and it was a very gentle smile. This was the first time Chiyu saw such a smile on her face. No matter what, Ryue was one of the most beautiful women he knew. When she smiled, it was as if the ice had suddenly thawed, and for a moment, Chiyu couldn't help but feel a little sluggish. Agree, of course I agree. You have such thoughts, which proves that you've grown up. Why don't I support you? If you can always think like this in the future, I think, maybe you'll become the real Kirin sooner, the real king of the Zodiac. Hearing her words, Chiyu couldn't help but feel a little relieved. After all, Ryue wasn't an unreasonable person. In his heart, he also gradually felt that this woman in front of him, who looked strong on the surface, actually had a special kind of concern for him, or rather, ardent expectations. Chapter 46. Ryue smiled and said, "Believe in yourself." Although Kirin was never in charge of fighting among the Zodiac Guardians, Kirin was not like that in ancient times. As the inheritor of the bloodline of the King of Divine Beasts, I believe that Kirin must have a lot of secrets. Don't you want to take revenge on me for insulting you? Fine, then you must become stronger as soon as possible. I'll wait for that day to come. As long as you can defeat me, I'll let you do whatever you want to me. Chiyu, who had just closed his eyes, suddenly opened them. Let me do whatever I want to you? Does that mean that I can do that with you too? As he said that, he couldn't help but reveal his ruffian nature, and the smile on the corner of his mouth also became lascivious. He looked at Ryue's chest without hiding it. Can't I praise you? Fine. When you have the ability to defeat me, you can do whatever you want. From the day I knew that I was the Zodiac Guardian, I never thought of marrying someone. If you can really defeat me, it will prove that you can replace me to lead the Zodiac Guardian. At that time, my responsibility will be light, and you can do whatever you want. Chiyu, I admit that I look down on you, but if one day you can really make me look at you in a different light, nothing is impossible. Chiyu looked at her blankly. He originally wanted to tease Ryue, but he didn't expect that the strong woman in front of him would directly agree. The way he looked at Ryue gradually changed, and the lascivious smile disappeared from his eyes. There was a trace of respect in his eyes. At this moment, he suddenly understood everything that Ryue had done to him in the past. She disdained him, and she beat him up. Each of them had a purpose, and the purpose was the same. That was to use different ways to stimulate the fighting spirit in his heart, so that he could work hard and become stronger. Now, she even used seduction. All of this could be said to be for the Zodiac Guardian, and also for himself. Ryue, thank you. Chiyu lowered his head. He suddenly didn't dare to look at Ryue's clear eyes. Ryue was stunned. Closing his eyes, he said, "There's no need to thank me. I just hope that you'll change after coming back from the Special Forces. I'll let Su Dong go with you." Chiyu shook his head and said, "No need. Since it's training, why do you want me to bring a bodyguard? Don't worry, General Ji won't let anything happen to me. I'll leave early tomorrow morning. I'll probably be back by the time I get back. Ming Ming and the rest should be back soon." Under the control of Ryue's mind, the Rising Dragon spell began to operate as usual. Kirin's aura once again merged with her thundercloud force to assist in the cultivation of the Rising Dragon spell. This time, Ryue suddenly discovered that the fusion of her dragon power and Qilin aura seemed to have reached a perfect state. She didn't need to deliberately control the circulation of her cloud power, and she could cultivate it at the fastest speed possible. A faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. If this smile had a meaning, it would be gratification. The next morning, under Ryue's gaze, Chi-yu left in Jida's car. Ryue didn't even ask where Chi-yu was going for the special training. She didn't know why, but she felt that she should trust Chi-yu for once. She had a special feeling that Chi-yu was no longer the Chi-yu of the past. He had changed, and he had become the person that she wanted to see the most. Tibet, St. Buddha Temple. A faint golden light surrounded Guan Ping's body, and the peaceful aura constantly stimulated his body's functions. As someone who studied human genetics, he could clearly feel that his body was constantly changing. The subtle changes were so subtle that even his sharp nerves couldn't sense them clearly. His strength seemed to have become stronger. The black hair on his head had completely turned golden. The weak body that a researcher should have had became unimaginably strong. It was as if in the deepest part of his heart, an indescribable power had erupted. The milky white light slowly faded, leaving only the golden light in the hall. Master Zagru slowly opened his eyes. His eyes suddenly revealed a trace of surprise. What a strong fluctuation! How could this be? Could it be that he has changed? The him that Zagru mentioned was obviously not the Guan Ping in front of him. His eyes were looking in one direction of the hall. His clear eyes seemed to be able to penetrate all obstacles and see what he wanted to see. Yes, he has changed. It seems that something that even I can't imagine has happened to him. Zaglu smiled as he stood up and walked out of the hall. When the heavy door of the hall was closed, only Guan Ping, who was shining with a golden light, was left in the hall. Or more accurately, he was a dog-like warrior. Master. As soon as Zagru walked out of the hall, he heard a light voice. Ming Ming, what's the matter? Looking at Ming Ming, who ran over with a face full of joy, Zagru couldn't help but reveal a kind smile on his face. Although he wasn't old and was even younger than Chi-yu, with the memories of 10 generations of monks, he had already seen through all the mortals in the world. Master, good news. Sister Modi's aptitude is too strong. She has already completed the 4th cloud, and is starting to cultivate the 5th cloud. This is great. Our Zodiac guardian has a powerful sister again. I think it won't be long before she catches up to Sudong. Zagru smiled and said, Modi's talent is indeed very good. Moreover, she can be said to be half an innate awakened. Because of her hard work, the rabbit bloodline in her body has already fused with her body. With the correct cultivation method for the ascending cloud chant, she will naturally improve by leaps and bounds. However, don't be blindly optimistic. Her current achievements can be said to be the result of her many years of accumulation, not the result of a few days of cultivation. When she reaches the 5th cloud, her cultivation speed will slow down. It won't be easy for her to surpass the tiger. However, her current strength is already above yours, causing the overall strength of the Zodiac Guardian to increase by a lot. Ming Ming giggled and said, Yes. In any case, when she reaches the 5th cloud, Sister Modi's strength is already very impressive. You don't know how powerful her legs are. I could originally resist for a while, but now I am no match for her. Zagrul said, You don't need to belittle yourself. You're still young. As long as you continue to work hard in your cultivation, you'll definitely be able to reach the peak. As long as you continue to work hard, you will reach the 4th cloud level in less than half a year. Oh right, how are goat and rat's cultivation? Hearing Zagru mention Yen Xiaoi and Vol, Ming Ming couldn't help but sigh. Those two? Vol is fine. Although his cultivation speed isn't fast, he is quite diligent. But Yen Xiaoi's mind isn't on cultivation at all. Even Vol has reached the early cloud level. He is still a bit away. I think it will be good if he can reach the early cloud level by the time we leave. Zagru smiled and said, Don't be too demanding. After all, they are all young people. It is inevitable that they will have some impatient habit. I think Goat will gradually realize its problem in the future. Moreover, your exchange with the Eastern Guardian might not be a bad thing. You don't need Goat and Rat strength. I also have good news. Guan Ping was a dog warrior. He had been here for half a month. What made me excited was that Guan Ping was a dog warrior. What makes me excited is that he is actually the supreme dog, lion mastiff. His strength is much stronger than any previous generation of dog warriors. Moreover, he is an innate awakened if my calculations are correct. If my calculations are correct, when you leave, he will at least have the strength of a 4-cloud. He will not be weaker than Modi. With dragon, tiger, rabbit, dog and chicken, there should be no problem in dealing with the Eastern Guardian exchange. Ming Ming smiled. That's great. I am happy that they are all stronger than me. Grandmaster, let's go and have a look. Yan Xiaoyi is still a bit afraid of you. With your supervision, he will be more serious in his cultivation. Zagru sighed and said, Ming Ming, I have a premonition these days. This premonition isn't very good. In the near future, the Zodiac Guardian may leave behind a lot of trouble. And this trouble is caused by 2 people. Ming Ming was stunned. She didn't understand why Zagru suddenly said this to her. And one of these 2 people is you. Although I don't know what it is, I hope that you will be able to calm your heart and be at peace with yourself. With peace of mind, there is nothing that can be reconciled. Ming Ming's body slightly trembled. Grandmaster, are you saying that I will bring trouble to everyone? Zagru raised his hand and said, Ming Ming, you don't need to feel troubled because of this. You only need to remember the responsibility of the Zodiac Guardian. Everything has its own will, although you will encounter great trouble in the future. However, your generation's Zodiac Guardian gods were born in response to the mandate of heaven. From the special mutation of the dragon, tiger, and dog, as well as the appearance of the 4 auspicious cloud Qilin, it can be seen that you will have to bear more than any other generation's Zodiac Guardian gods. Hearing the words 4 auspicious cloud Qilin, Qi Yu's figure involuntarily appeared in Ming Ming's mind. It had been a while since she had left, and she had heard from her brother about what had happened to Qi Yu. She couldn't help but feel secretly dissatisfied. That Qi Yu fellow, he hadn't even given her a call after she had left for so long. He doesn't have me in his heart at all. I'll teach him a lesson when I get back. Her pretty face slightly blushed. When she thought of Qi Yu, she couldn't help but think of the night when the lotus pond was under the moonlight. Ming Ming, didn't you want to see the mice and goats? Let's go. Zagru's voice interrupted Ming Ming's thoughts. They walked towards the other direction of the Saint Buddha temple. Before they reached the place where Yan Xiaoyi and Vol practiced, they heard their voices. Vol's breath seemed to be a little short. You damn goat, don't force me, okay? Yan Xiaoyi's lascivious voice sounded. How did I force you? Your phone is full of photos of my cousin. Tell me, did you take them secretly? I just felt that the way you looked at my sister was not right. I didn't expect that you are so young, but you are so bold. You even dare to have ideas about my sister. F*CKU, you lascivious guy. I am not small. If you have the ability, compare the thickness of your waist with me. Yan Xiaoyi said disdainfully, what's there to compare? If you are a little more handsome than me, maybe you have a chance. Now, I think you'd better forget it. Look at your head, your looks, and your age. Bro, I advise you to give up. Give up your head. Don't meddle in my business. My boss said, don't be afraid of short and strong, but afraid of thin and drooping. I can see that you are thin and long. No wonder you don't even have a fixed girlfriend. It turns out that you have inherited the tradition of your goat. Yan Xiaoyi said angrily, bullshit, I am a man among men. The women who have been with me don't know how satisfied they are. What is the tradition of the goat that you said? Vol smiled and said, isn't it just impotence? Tian, Bo, Guang, I will castrate you. Listening to Yan Xiaoyi's angry roar, Zagru looked at Ming Ming with some confusion and asked, what is impotence? Is it the tail of a goat? Why is Xiaoyi suddenly angry? Ming Ming lightly spat, Master, let's go. These 2 guys don't know how to say anything good. Zagru smiled and said, they are still young and will get better in the future. I can see that they are the same as Chi-Yu, they have true temperament. But just now Yan Xiaoi said that Vol likes Modi, is this true? Ming Ming said, it should be, he has always liked Sister Modi. Oh Master, I have always wanted to ask you, can we, the guardian Zodiac gods, marry each other? Speaking of this, she unexpectedly thought of Chi-Yu. Her pretty face couldn't help but blush again. Zaglu smiled and said, what's wrong with that? But there is one thing you may not know. Because you have inherited the blood of the Zodiac, so your physical characteristics will also be affected by the Zodiac you belong to. This also includes what you ordinary people call sexual ability. Suddenly hearing Zagru say the 3 words, sexual ability, Ming Ming almost tripped on the stairs under her feet. Master, why are you also? Zagru smiled and said, we Tibetan lamas do not prohibit marriage. Lust is the beginning of life. If there is no primitive desire, then how can human beings pass on? You don't need to be embarrassed. In this regard, the biggest trouble should be Su Dong. Ming Ming asked curiously, why him? Zagru's voice was much lower, and he said a few words in Ming Ming's ear. After listening to his words, Ming Ming covered her little mouth, and after a long while, she exclaimed, my God, Ju Sha is like this. Ha ha ha, I'm dying of laughter. Su Dong actually. I'm dying of laughter. If Chi-Yu knew about this, I don't know how he would laugh. Ming Ming's body trembled slightly, and she covered her stomach with one hand. Obviously, Zagru's words were very strong. Zagru said with some embarrassment, I also know this from the memory of the previous generations of eminent monks. But this doesn't affect anything. As for the rest of you, there should be no trouble in this aspect. Ming Ming laughed and thought, since Su Dong can be like this, will Yan Xiaoi really be impotent as Vol said? At this time, Vol's voice came again. Ha ha, you crazy Yan, what do you think? You don't work hard, and now you can't even beat me. You still want to castrate me? I'll help you with a surgery first. You know, we mice are best at using our hands. I'm going to be the world's most skillful hand in the future. My hand skills are very brilliant. How about I directly change your sex? Vol, F*CKU, do you still want to chase my sister? Let me go, I was wrong, okay? No. I will help you chase my sister. That's more like it. Everything is good here, but there is no meat to eat. When I return to the capital, the first thing I will do is to eat a big meal of mutton hot pot. You are not allowed to eat mutton. Don't you know I am a sheep? If you can, eat rat meat. I don't care. From Vol's voice, it could be heard that in front of Yan Xiaoi, he was a dead pig not afraid of boiling water. Listening to their conversation, Ming Ming and Zagru couldn't help but laugh. The two looked at the sapphire-like sky and couldn't help but think of a person, the king of the Zodiac, Chi-Yu. It had been 15 days, and he had been here for half a month. Chi-Yu felt like he was going to die again, and there was not a single bone in his body that didn't hurt. His muscles seemed to be filled with lead water, so heavy that he couldn't even move. His lips were already cracked, but there was no water around him, only sand. Although it was already the end of November, the sun's rays were still so vicious in the desert, constantly sucking away moisture from his pores. His skin had already turned from bronze to dark brown, and there was a layer of white frost on the surface. That was the salt left after his sweat evaporated. Lying in the sand, feeling his life leave him bit by bit, Chi-Yu couldn't help but think of his experience in the past half a month. In fact, until now, he didn't fully understand what the military base was for. He only remembered that on the first day he came here, he began the so-called training. How could that be called training? The muscles on Chi-Yu's face twitched. Only when he came here personally could he understand the word hell that Jida said. When he first came here, his training was very simple. Just like the others, he had to carry 100 kilograms of weight for 10 kilometers in the desert. That was 100 kilograms. Not 100 kilograms, not even 10 kilograms. It was as heavy as half of Chi-Yu himself. At first, he thought that the black iron tower-like instructor made a mistake. However, when he saw the elites who had started training with him, each and every one of them carrying a huge backpack and starting to run, he finally understood. It was all true. 100 kilograms with Chi Yu's strength, he definitely couldn't carry it. Therefore, he used the help of the Thundercloud Force. With the help of the Thundercloud Force, he felt relatively relaxed when he first started running, but that was only for a short period of time. His Thundercloud Force hadn't reached the level of Chuyun, and its energy was limited. After running for about 3 kilometers, the Thundercloud Force had been squeezed dry by his own weight and extremely strong gravity. From the 4th kilometer onward, Chi Yu experienced the hellish feeling of training. Running in the desert because the sand was soft, it was difficult to leverage, and it was a very difficult thing to do. When he was carrying 100 kilograms of weight, his feet could only sink deeper into the sand, and it took a lot of strength to pull them out. Therefore, in the 4th kilometer, Chi Yu fell for a long time and didn't get up. At that time, he only had one way, which was to restore his Thundercloud Force and continue to move forward with the help of the Thundercloud Force. It took him about half an hour to recover. This time, perhaps because of his own overdraft and the harsh environment in the desert, the Thundercloud Force only supported him to move forward for 2 kilometers before he fell again. For a full 10 kilometers of cross-country running, Chi Yu stopped a total of 6 times, and each time he ran closer than the last time. When he came to the finish line, it was already 3.5 hours later. At that time, he was completely exhausted, and the ability of the water Thundercloud Force in his body was weakened to the lowest point in the desert. His body was already on the verge of collapse. However, both Xie and the deep-sea nether snake remained silent. Later, Chi Yu asked them why they watched him suffer at that time. Xie's answer was that Chi Yu chose to train hard, so how could he destroy it? The deep-sea nether snake's answer was even more decisive. He said that the desert was the place that the deep-sea nether snake was most afraid of. They could not wait to hide, so how could they run out to help? Chi Yu was naturally the last to arrive at the destination on the first day, but no one pitied him. Because he was the last to arrive, he was directly punished. Before receiving the punishment, he drank enough water, ate a full meal, and rested for an hour. The punishment began. The punishment was very simple. Free fight. It was not one-on-one, but one against a group. Chi Yu still remembered that he shouted the word one-on-one at that time. But the instructor's answer was the same as what he said to Yan Xiaoyi at that time. It was a group of them fighting one-on-one or a group of them fighting one-on-one. You could choose. Chi Yu shouted that it was unfair, but the instructor only said one sentence and choked him. The others came back a few hours earlier than Yu and had already completed the fighting training. After that, Chi Yu was facing a total of 23 elites from the Special Forces. What was the fighting skill that the Special Forces learned? It was very simple: kill with one blow. Chi Yu did not use Kirin Red and Kirin Hidden. He gritted his teeth and stood in front of the 23 people. The Thundercloud Force and the Thundercloud Force were his last resort. When he used the 2 Thundercloud Force to knock down 7 people, he fainted again. Because his body couldn't take it anymore, he fainted again. Even he didn't know how badly he had been beaten that day. In terms of prestige, he only felt like a sandbag. Just when the instructor thought that he was just a psychic with some special ability, the next morning, the guy who was beaten to the point of near coma the day before actually got up and continued to participate in the training. Although his nose and face were swollen, he still insisted on coming. In fact, Chi Yu did not participate in the training in the afternoon on the first day because his body did not allow it. But the next day, he still got up and won some respect from the Special Forces elites who trained together with him. Although strength was the most easily recognized thing for these elites. But it was undeniable that the same was true for willpower. So, the second day of training began. On the second day, Chi Yu found out that the 10 kilometers cross-country run with a weight of 100 kilograms was just a warm-up in the whole hellish training. The next day, he came back a full 2 hours earlier than the first day, which stunned the instructor. Although he was still in the last place, but his speed of improvement surprised everyone. How could the instructor know that because of the pain and suffering the day before, Chi Yu had reached the bottleneck of the thundercloud force and the thundercloud force? He actually broke through the first cloud and finally became the real Kirin of the first cloud. At the same time, under the effect of the 9 blue sea thunder orbs, his water thundercloud force and thundercloud force were upgraded to the second cloud at the same time. His strength had a huge leap. Because of this, Chi Yu completely dispelled the idea of giving up. Because he was the last one to come back. Therefore, that special duel began once again. However, this time, Chi Yu didn't fall. Instead, it was the 23 elites from the special forces that fell. The thundercloud force at the second cloud level was enough for Chi Yu to perform far better than the previous day. Plus, the water thundercloud force was upgraded to the second cloud level, so his stamina during the cross-country run was much better than the first day. The instructor looked at the 23 Special Forces soldiers who were electrocuted by Chi Yu and couldn't help but exclaim that he was facing a monster. Of course, he had seen monsters more than once. Chi Yu also started from that day. He started all the training. If there was anything special about the hellish training in the Taklamakan military base, it would be that all the training was conducted in the desert. The training in the afternoon was very simple. There was only one task, which was to kill the 24 desert foxes released by the base. Everyone had to kill one to complete the mission. When he first received the mission, Chi Yu didn't feel that it was difficult at all. However, before the mission began, the instructor hung an energy detector on him and told him that he was not allowed to use any of his abilities. Otherwise, if the detector found out, what awaited him would be a hellish punishment. Was it easy to catch a fox? It was probably more difficult than catching a bear. After all, as long as you were stronger than a bear, it wasn't difficult to catch it. However, a fox was undoubtedly one of the most cunning animals. If you wanted to catch it, you had to be smarter than it. Without the assistance of any tools, and without the ability to use Kirin's ability, Chi Yu was in the desert for 6 hours. He passed out when the sun set. The water thundercloud force also required water energy molecules to maintain, and the water energy molecules in the desert were undoubtedly the thinnest. However, there were only 2 people who completed the mission that day. Every day's training was different, but the burden on the body was huge. Especially after Chi Yu was forbidden from using Kirin's ability, combat training was his nightmare. Although the other Special Forces elites didn't plan to take revenge, they had been electrocuted to the point that their bodies were burnt and numb for hours. They even lost control of their bowels and urine, so it was normal for them to be a little heavy-handed. In the first week of training, Chi Yu's skin wasn't normal. On Earth, there were white people, yellow people, and black people. These 3 skin colors were the most common, and perhaps there were some special ones. However, there were no purple people. But Chi Yu had created a precedent. The way to become a purple person was very simple. When your body was beaten until it was completely bruised and swollen, you would be a purple person. Chi Yu's stubbornness gradually revealed itself. Through continuous training, he discovered that no matter how hard these special forces hit him during combat, although his body would be injured, his bones wouldn't break. He asked Xie, and Xie told him that after achieving the Chuyun state, his body had begun to change. And to everyone's surprise, no matter how badly Chi Yu was injured the day before, he would climb up the next day full of vigor. Although his body had changed from purple to blue, he didn't have any intention of giving up training. Kirin, the mythical beast, was born to be one of the strongest fighters among the ancient beasts, and the potential of humans was almost unlimited. Under the fusion of these 2 conditions, Chi Yu was changing, and he gradually became stronger and stronger. Ryue was right. The stronger the stimulation of the outside world, the easier it was for Kirin's potential to be stimulated. When the second week of training began, he could already carry 100 kilograms of weight across 10 kilometers of the desert. Although he still couldn't catch the fox, he had gradually begun to catch up with the Special Forces elites in other subjects. The hellish training was not only difficult for Chiyu, but also for the Special Forces. They would now affectionately call Chiyu Qiang. Why? Because he was a cockroach that couldn't be killed. That tenacious vitality and the tenacity of his bones had won the respect of these Special Forces. Could Kirin's ability really not be used? Chiyu didn't think so. Thundercloud Force couldn't be used, but it didn't mean that his skills couldn't be used. The various abilities inherited by Kirin's bloodline were broad and profound. Thundercloud Force was the foundation. Using Thundercloud Force could produce more power, but even without Thundercloud Force, Kirin's skills were still first class. On the 10th day, Chiyu relied on the instantaneous understanding of Kirin to catch the fox with the speed of his body. After passing the test in other subjects, he entered the second stage where Jida was eliminated. When he entered the second stage of training, he was surprised to find that the Special Forces soldiers who entered this stage before him had left, or rather, been eliminated. Lying on the ground, Chiyu adjusted the Thundercloud Force in his body. Thundercloud Force couldn't be used externally, but it could be used internally. These days, Chiyu was surprised to see that his Thundercloud Force was growing at an amazing speed. In just 15 days, his Wind Thundercloud Force and Fire Thundercloud Force had made great progress under the stimulation of the desert. On the day he understood Kirin's travel, the wind energy molecules in the air rushed into his body like crazy, and he directly broke through the realm of the second cloud. In the desert, which was extremely hot during the day, the fire energy molecules were obviously much richer than anywhere else. Therefore, his Fire Thundercloud Force had also reached the bottle diameter of the first cloud to the second cloud. This change happened in just 15 days, which was half a month. Chapter 47. After 5 days, he understood why Jida chose to give up. It was because the second stage was too difficult. It was almost impossible for a human to complete. The second stage of training was not complicated. There was only one goal: to transport a ton of ammunition 50 kilometers away in one day. It sounded simple, but it was as difficult as climbing to the sky. A ton. With Chiyu's current strength, he could barely move it. However, there were no supplies in the desert. 50 kilometers was longer than a marathon, and he had to drag a ton of weight. Perhaps only a tank could do it. No, a tank would probably sink into the sand. This was a training of strength, but also a further tempering of willpower. The muscles on Chiyu's body were much stronger than when he had first arrived. 5 days into the second stage, he was no longer a purple man, but a black man. Almost every Special Forces soldier would experience sunburn, but Chiyu was different. He was Kirin. The Water Thundercloud Force protected his skin. It also maintained a certain amount of water in his body. From the beginning of the second stage of training, there was an instructor. Once the Special Forces soldier felt that he couldn't hold on, he could immediately ask for support. Qiang, don't force yourself. Go back and rest. Continue tomorrow. The instructor's lifeless voice sounded in Chiyu's ears. Chiyu reluctantly raised his head. Looking at the instructor standing beside him with a big bag on his back, he firmly shook his head and said in a hoarse voice, "Instructor Lei, I can continue for a while. I can get up after a rest." Instructor Lei nodded. He didn't say anything else. No one knew what the instructor's real name was. The other instructors called him Lazy. He was about the same size as Jida. He was a little shorter than Jida, but more majestic. 20 minutes later, Chiyu struggled to get up from the ground. He tightened the rope that tied the ammunition to his back and asked Lazy, "Instructor, how far have I gone?" Lazy said indifferently, "About 11 kilometers. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. This is the most difficult time. It's rare that you could hold on for so long. Chi-Yu smiled bitterly and said, "If I can eat and drink, I might be able to pull it over within a day." Copper said, "You still don't understand the true meaning of this training. The most difficult part of this training was not the 1 ton of ammunition, nor was it the 50 kilometers of desert cross-country, but water and food. In other words, it was the control of one's own nutrient. You have to understand that we are not training ordinary people here. Everyone who walks out of here, even if they only pass the first training, they would be absolute monsters in the outside world. In this second training, you have to learn to control your pores, control your breathing, and use all the nutrients in your body to pull things. Only in this way can you go further." It had been 10 years since anyone had been able to complete this training. It seemed that geniuses were hard to find. Chi-Yu looked at Lazy with a strange expression. Usually, it was difficult for Lazy to speak more than a few words, but today, he seemed to be particularly talkative. "I understand. The second test is to train a camel. Instructor Lazy, I heard that there were 14 people who passed all 3 tests. How come no one passed the second test in 10 years? Lazy said, "Those 14 who passed the test. 3 of them passed when this place was just built, 10 passed in the first year after it was reopened, and the last one passed 11 years ago. Do you know why there were so many people who passed the first year after it was rebuilt? Because those 10 people were the most outstanding geniuses in our country, or rather, each of them was a monster. They all had their own special abilities, physical abilities. The reason why you could walk 10 kilometers, wasn't it also because of your special ability? Those special soldiers who passed the first training stage, after entering the second stage, can't even go beyond 5 kilometers. If I guessed correctly, one of your abilities should be the ability to gather water. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been able to last until now." Chi-Yu smiled bitterly and said, "Your guess is quite accurate. However, instructor, do you believe that within 10 days, I will definitely pass the second test?" Lazy nodded seriously and said, "I believe you." "Oh, you believe me?" Chi-Yu looked at him in surprise. Lazy said, "Because you are Chiang. I am 42 years old this year. I came here when I was 21 years old, and I have been here for 21 years. In these 21 years, you are the one who has made the most progress I have ever seen. Perhaps some people can pass all the tests in the first few days, but none of them can make such huge progress every day like you. Perhaps I should describe it as a leap. Your adaptability and self-regulation are very strong, especially your self-recovery ability. It seems that the cells in your body are different from ordinary people. If it wasn't for your special identity, I'm afraid there would already be scientists who want to study you." Chi-Yu tried hard to take a step forward. "Even if they really study me, it will be a waste of time. They won't be able to study anything from me. Stop talking nonsense. With every word you say, the water in your body will evaporate a little more. Don't you understand this simple principle?" Chi-Yu's heart suddenly moved. "Instructor, I have an idea, and I want to ask for your help." "What?" Lazy looked at Chi-Yu coldly. "Don't expect me to help you with anything. If you want to pass any test here, you have to rely on your own strength." Chi-Yu smiled. His smile contained something that Lazy couldn't understand. "Instructor Lazy, I just want you to help me pull me back before I die." Lazy was stunned. His sharp face showed a trace of impatience. "Don't play word games with me." Chi-Yu stopped and looked at the heavy object that left a deep mark in the desert behind him. "I will lie here from now on. Please feel my body's condition. If you think I am about to die, give me water to drink. Consider my action today a failure. As long as I am not about to die, don't worry about me." As he said that, he tore off his camouflage clothes with his hook-like hands and quickly stripped himself clean. He spread his arms to the sides and lay down on the desert with his arms spread wide. Qiang, are you crazy? You are committing suicide. I didn't expect that even your willpower couldn't hold on. As Lazy said that, he pulled Qiyu up from the ground. Qiyu's weight of more than 100 kilograms was like a straw to him. Qiyu's body struggled. Instructor Lazy, I am not giving up. This is a type of cultivation method. Put me down. Lazy was stunned. Bullshit. What kind of training method is running naked? Look at your current appearance. In the desert, it won't take long for you to turn into human jerky. Without the protection of the body's water content wouldn't last long when the sun was at its hottest at noon. Qiyu shook his head and said, Instructor, what I mean is that you can save me before I turn into human jerky. As you can see, one of my abilities is water. I'll be honest with you. I have 4 abilities: water, thunder, fire, and wind. If I want to improve my strength, I need to improve all 4 at the same time to enter the next realm. Remember when I first came here, I couldn't hold on the first day, but on the second day, I beat all the special forces? At that time, it was because I entered a new realm. What I need to do now is to break through another realm. I need to absorb a large number of fire energy molecules to do that, so I need to evaporate as much water as possible in my body. Only in this way can my body absorb more fire energy molecules. This is obviously the most suitable time. Instructor, please let me try. Lazy looked deeply at Qiyu. But you will be in great danger. Once you consume too much water, I can't save you. The higher-ups have told me. No matter what, I can't let you be in danger. I want to try. If I can break through this bottleneck, maybe tomorrow I can pass the second stage of training. Instructor Lazy, isn't this what you want to see? Qiyu's voice was firm. It suddenly occurred to him that water and fire were 2 completely opposite energies. If he let his body have less water, the faster the fire energy training would be. It was obviously the luck brought by Lei Linyu to upgrade the wind thundercloud force to the second cloud. But the fire thundercloud force wasn't so easy. If he wanted to upgrade it, he would have to pay a higher price. There were plenty of wind and fire energy molecules in the desert. This was his chance. Since he had suffered so much, why not take the risk and try it again? Qiyu had always been a person who wasn't afraid of taking risks. In the beginning, he had attracted lightning with his body. Although it was dangerous, it brought him great benefits. Facing the impossible task of the second stage, Qiyu knew that he didn't have the potential to become a camel. So, if he wanted to break through the second stage of the test, he needed to upgrade the thundercloud force. As long as he broke through the second cloud, his water thundercloud force would directly rise to the third cloud. At that time, the abundance of water thundercloud force would be enough to support him to complete the task better. And when his whole body rose to the second cloud, it meant that the Kirin blood in his body would further transform his body. The purpose of this special training would be achieved. Okay. But when I feel that you can't go on, I will stop you. Lazy let go of Qiyu. A man appreciates another man. It sounded a little disgusting. But when a man with an iron will looked at someone who was similar to him in front of him, this kind of appreciation was like looking at his own brother, a real brother. Qiyu lay down again. Without clothes, as soon as his body came into contact with the scorching heat of the desert, his whole body spasmed violently as if it was on fire. The sun was above him, and the scorching yellow sand was below him. That feeling was not something that ordinary people could imagine. Lying there, Qiyu didn't do anything deliberately. The Kirin bead on his neck had naturally turned red. A large number of fire energy molecules were transferred into Qiyu's body through the Kirin bead and quickly circulated according to the cultivation route of the rising Qilin skill. Although the water thundercloud force had reached the second cloud, it had been almost consumed in order to protect Qiyu for most of the day. In this situation, the water thundercloud force would only be consumed faster. The water in Qiyu's body was constantly evaporating in the scorching environment. Chi-Yu suddenly wanted to laugh. The sunlight made it difficult for him to open his eyes. He wanted to laugh, because he felt like a chicken wing lying in the oven. It seemed like it would turn brown after a while. The chicken wing smelled good, but he didn't know what it would taste like when it was cooked. My brother down there won't be roasted, will he? Lazy's eyes were fixed on Chi-Yu. Standing there, his clothes were already drenched in sweat. Looking at this young man who was more than 20 years younger than him, he felt like he was looking at his younger self again. The Taklamakan military base wasn't just used for training. It was an important military base for the Yen Huang military, and this special training center was only a small part of it. However, the status of the training center was supreme in the eyes of all the Special Forces soldiers. It was even sacred. As long as a Special Forces soldier could walk out of this place, even if he didn't pass the first stage of training, he would still be respected by other Special Forces soldiers. Being able to make it to this place was a testament to one's strength. There were a total of 3 instructors here. The 3 of them didn't just stay here. There were only 2 training sessions here every year, and each session lasted about 2 hours. For the rest of the time, they all had their own identities. If Chi-Yu knew that Instructor Lei was actually a major general, what would he think? Chi-Yu's expression gradually changed. His skin became abnormally dry, and there was no longer any sweat on his body. The hottest time of the day was coming. Lazy's feet moved a few times, but he retracted them each time. Even he could feel the changes in Chi-Yu's body. There were 2 extreme changes. One was a strong energy fluctuation. The other was the feeling of walking towards death. Was it hot? When a person was roasted to the point where he completely lost the feeling of heat, it was impossible for him to be conscious. Vaguely, Chi-Yu saw himself when he was young. When he was sensible, he asked the director of the orphanage who his parents were. The orphanage's director's answer was simple. Just like any other orphan, he had been abandoned in front of the orphanage. On his body was a piece of paper with 2 simple words: Chi-Yu's name. Parents? For Chi-Yu, these 2 words were so far away. When he was young, Chi-Yu was never willing to leave the orphanage, because he was afraid to see the happy faces of other children who were about the same age as him. At that time, his character was a bit eccentric. It was not until he graduated from junior high school, when he met his first big brother, the smoker, that the situation changed. The result of the change was that he became a ruffian, a hooligan, a scum of society, or a vermin of the country. Scum, what an ugly word. Chi-Yu wanted to cry, but at this time, the water in his body could no longer help him secrete tears. He wanted to cry, not because of pain, but because of happiness, or because of gratitude. Master Zagru changed his life, and he was one of the few people he was most grateful to in his life. What Jida said was right. Chi-Yu was a person with strong self-esteem. No one was born a hooligan, but he was too helpless before. Except for the state's relief to support his life, no one was willing to help him, and no one could help him change the situation at that time. But the appearance of Zagru changed everything for him, giving him strength and the blood of the king of Kirin, making him who he was today. An unprecedented fighting spirit suddenly burned in Chi-Yu's heart. Opportunity, since I have the opportunity to become stronger, no matter what difficulties I encounter, I must go through. I am Kirin, the king of all the Zodiac guardian gods, and also the king of the mythical beasts. At this moment, everything that was originally fuzzy suddenly became clear. Chi-Yu clearly felt that his body seemed to be completely integrated with the whole desert. Kirin's skills appeared clearly in his mind, and every one of them was so clear. The originally scorching fire thundercloud force suddenly turned into a warm liquid, and the red fire seemed to have turned into blue water. At that moment, Chi-Yu clearly saw the purple, blue, red, and green lights in his body light up at the same time. It was an indescribable feeling. Every cell that had fallen into a dead silence became active again, and every cell was constantly dividing. His bones felt itchy. His whole body seemed to be full of strength, especially his right arm. The bones of his arm had turned black. It was an incomparably deep black, a black that was full of power. Lazy saw that Chi Yu's breathing had begun to pause, and he knew that it was time for him to make a move. Otherwise, there would be no way to save him. Just as he took out a water bottle and was about to save Chi Yu, suddenly 2 dazzling lights burst out from his eyes. His body subconsciously bounced back. The Kirin bead emitted an incomparably bright light. A purple thunderbolt soared into the sky, followed by a red flame, followed by a green tornado, and finally, the most precious thing in the desert, a moist water vapor. Then, a strange scene appeared. Chi Yu's body, which was originally close to death, floated up from the sand. As the 4 colors of light hovered, the sand on his body completely disappeared. The 4 colors of light began to rotate, wrapping Chi Yu inside. Lazy clearly saw a monster appear on Chi Yu's chest and back. It had a black body, silver hair, and that strange horn. Together with that strange horn, they were both gorgeous and dazzling. The beast seemed to come alive as a faint radiance enveloped Chi Yu's entire body. The sound of crackling made one's teeth ache. It was the sound of Chi Yu's bones. Lazy stared at everything in front of him, stunned. Chi Yu's body seemed to be changing. His dark skin had returned to its bronze color, and the traces of dryness had disappeared. A layer of lustrous luster appeared on the surface of his skin, and his long black hair was scattered behind his head. An irresistible and domineering aura suddenly emerged from the monster pattern. Strong, Lazy could only use these 2 words to describe it. He looked carefully and saw that Chi Yu's face also seemed to be changing. Although it was still not a handsome face, his facial features looked more harmonious. Perhaps it was because of the special training he had undergone for the past half a month, but his face revealed a resolute look. What kind of ability user is this kid? Why is he so strange? Lazy's heart was filled with doubts. 15 days. In a short period of 15 days, Chi Yu had broken through the bottle path of the first cloud and ascended to the second cloud realm. All of this could not be explained by chance. Chance was built on many certainties. When he obtained the 3 Kirin's octatic treasures, Kirin Red, Kirin Bead, and Kirin Een had already begun to transform Chi Yu's body, making his thundercloud force more condensed. Because of the relic bead, Chi Yu did not have to worry about cultivation deviation. After many days of accumulation, coupled with some accidental opportunities, he had gradually experienced the Kirin fast cultivation that Xie Ji had mentioned. A Qilin's cultivation speed should be faster than any other ancient beast. What's more, there was the Blue Sea Thunder Bead, a divine object created by the power of nature. Chi Yu had finally begun to take steps towards becoming a true powerhouse. This time, the changes in his body were obviously much stronger than before. Chi Yu could clearly feel every change in his body. The 4 different attributes of the thundercloud force had magically combined, as if there was an incomparably majestic voice constantly roaring in the depths of his heart. Fire and wind flowed back and forth in his meridians like mercury, but at this time, Chi Yu's body was suddenly cold and numb. The 9 blue sea thunder beads clearly appeared in his body, and the energy contained within them slowly exploded. The already wide meridians seemed to expand endlessly, and the blue and purple energy constantly emitted from the 9 beads. Even in a semi-conscious state, Chi Yu could still feel the huge amount of energy. The physical strength that he had lost was quickly recovering, and the feeling of being filled with power made him slowly open his eyes. The 4 colored lights surrounding his body slowly gathered below him, and the illusory Kirin phantom stepped on the 4-colored auspicious cloud, raising its head high. Chi Yu suddenly felt that his right arm was very itchy, as if there were countless ants crawling in his meridians. His body stood upright in midair, and with a fierce roar, as if a bolt of lightning had struck down from the sky, green veins appeared on his right arm along with his bulging muscles, and a terrifying energy seemed to condense under his flesh and blood. The originally sunny sky suddenly changed, and under the cover of the dark clouds, the earth lost its original light. The earth lost its original radiance. Strong winds blew and clouds moved. Chi-Yu, who was completely naked, suddenly felt as if his body was being torn apart. Waves of excruciating pain radiated from his body. On his right arm, a black and a silver halo alternated. Chi-Yu knew that he finally possessed the true power of the Qilin arm. Although this was only the initial stage, he still possessed it. What it brought to him was a qualitative leap in his strength. 15 days, I've completed the cultivation of the second cloud. Then, there are still 15 days left, can I improve again? As he floated to the ground, his muscular right arm suddenly stretched out. Chi-Yu shouted, "Instructor Lei, don't be so arrogant." Chi-Yu lifted the ton of ammunition above his head and shouted, "I'll wait for you at the destination." A blue light flashed under his feet, and as if only a phantom could be seen, his body disappeared in an instant. That tall and burly figure, that right arm that was like a demon king, left an indelible mark in Lei Zi's heart. As Chi-Yu left, all the visions in the sky also disappeared. Although the sunlight once again shined on Lei Zi's body, but he still felt cold all over. Just as Chi-Yu was floating in midair, he realized that his body seemed to be enveloped by an invisible aura. At that time, he didn't dare to move, as if he only needed to make the slightest change. It would bring about a catastrophe. After more than 20 years, Leicester once again felt that someone could bring him so much pressure just by relying on their physical strength. Could it be that another owner of a diamond badge is about to appear? It seemed that the third stage of the test would not be able to stop him from advancing. It seems that I should write a report to the higher-up. Helplessly shaking his head, Lei Zi's body suddenly jumped out, and after a few ups and downs, he disappeared behind a slope in the desert. Half a month later, Beijing International Airport. Hai Ryue stood expressionlessly at the 13th exit, waiting quietly. Perhaps because she didn't have a job today, she deliberately didn't wear her usual business attire, but chose a light blue casual dress. If it weren't for the silver-white mink shawl on her shoulders, it would be hard to imagine that she was dressed in winter clothes. Her long hair was combed into a ponytail, which added a bit of charm and a bit less of Wang Long's toughness. She had been at the airport for some time. Today was the day when Ming Ming and the others would return. They had been away for more than 2 months. The day before yesterday, Zagru informed Hai Ryue that they were about to return. The time of the Eastern Guardian Exchange Conference was getting closer and closer. Hai Ryue had already begun to nervously prepare. It was the most suitable time for Ming Ming and the others to return. But although she was at the airport, her heart had already drifted elsewhere. Chi-Yu had already left the capital for an entire month. In this 1 month, there was not a single bit of news from him, as if he had vanished into thin air. Hai Ryue had sought out Jida more than once to inquire about Chi-Yu's whereabouts, but Jida had always rejected her with the reason that it was a military secret. It had been a whole month, and the exchange conference was getting closer and closer. Chi-Yu, when will you come back? Sister Ryue. A clear and surprised voice awakened Hai Ryue from her thoughts. She saw Ming Ming, who was dressed in sportswear, walking quickly towards her. Behind her, followed by Yan Xiaoi, Vol, Guan Ping, and Modi. The 5 of them looked energetic, without the tiredness that should have appeared after a flight. Ming Ming. Hai Ryue held Ming Ming's hand. The aura of the Ascending Dragon spell and the Ascending Rooster spell came into contact. Without deliberately sensing it, she could clearly feel that Ji Ming Ming's strength had increased again. When Yan Xiaoi saw Hai Ryue, his eyes lit up instantly. He strode towards Ryue and lifted the corner of his mouth slightly, revealing a smile that he thought was handsome. You must be the dragon. I heard from Ming Ming that you're a stunning beauty. You're much more beautiful than I imagined. As he spoke, he had already extended his hand towards Hai Ryue. Hai Ryue looked at him coldly. Yan Xiaoi only felt 2 solid eyes piercing into his heart like sharp needles. His whole body trembled, and his mind actually appeared to be in a trance for a moment. His whole body froze there, and for a moment, he did not know what to do. Hai Ryue pulled Ming Ming and directly brushed past Yan Xiaoyi. Yan Xiaoyi vaguely heard her say, "Are you that sheep that only knows how to play tricks? You're not qualified to shake hands with me." When Hai Ryue's gaze met Modi's, a faint smile appeared on her face. Although Modi deliberately wore a long coat, when she walked, she unintentionally revealed her long legs, which were still so soul-stirring. Last time, Modi, Vol, and Yan Xiaoyi did not have much contact with Hai Ryu. They only went directly to Tibet under her arrangement. Today was the first time they officially met. The two beauties, who were about the same age, looked at each other and could not help but reveal a gentle smile. "Hello, I'm Hai Ryue." Facing Modi, Ryue took the initiative to stretch out her slender and white right hand. Modi shook hands with her, smiled slightly and said, "Hello, I'm Modi." Hai Ryue nodded to Vol and Guan Ping and said, "Let's go. We'll talk in the car." The extended Cadillac car was waiting for them outside the airport. As soon as they got in the car, Ming Ming asked impatiently, "Sister Ryue, hasn't Chi-Yu come back yet?" She only heard from Jida that Chi-Yu had gone for special training, but Jida did not tell her the specific location. Ryue shook her head and said, "Not yet, but it should be soon. There are still more than 10 days before the exchange. The last time he left, he only asked for a month's leave from me. How are the results of your trip?" Hearing that Chi-Yu had not come back yet, although Ming Ming tried to restrain her emotions, Hai Ryue still felt a faint sense of loss from her. "Sister Ryue, this time, the strength of our Zodiac guardian has greatly increased. When I first met Chi-Yu, I couldn't figure out what was so powerful about him. But since his appearance, we have 4 more companions. Sister Modi has already completed the cultivation of the 4th cloud, and Brother Guan is even more powerful. He is about to complete the 5th cloud. The strength of innate awakened is really fast. Especially in the early stage, it is said that Brother Zagru inherited the lion-mastiff bloodline and is a special dog warrior of the Zodiac. In the future, his fighting potential will be very big. Vol and Yan Xiaoyi have also reached the initial cloud, and basically have the basic abilities of their Zodiac forms. Overall, we have gained a lot from this trip to Tibet. With Big Sister Modi and Big Brother Guan, there shouldn't be any problems with this exchange." Guan Ping sighed softly and said, "After talking with Grandmaster, I have understood a lot of doubts in my heart. It seems that I will have to guard our country with another identity in the future." Chapter 48. From the bottom of her heart, Hai Ryue did not want to go on like this forever, because it really made her feel very tired. She had spent a lot of time thinking about the future of the Zodiac Guardian God, so she had to spend a lot of energy on it. Hai Ryue was a person who thirsted for power. Just as Chi-Yu had said, he was a Tyrannosaurus Rex. What he thirsted for was power. He thirsted for power to make himself stronger, which meant that he needed to devote himself to cultivation. Not long after Hai Ryue picked up Guan Ping and the others, another plane slowly flew into the capital airport from another direction in the Yenwang Republic. Chi-Yu struggled to get off the plane with a pale face. Compared to before, his condition was slightly better. However, this time, he was alone on the plane without anyone to distract him. Naturally, his acrophobia became more intense. After letting out a long breath, Chi-Yu muttered to himself, "The feeling of being on land is really great. If it weren't for the distance, I wouldn't have wanted to take a plane. I wouldn't want to take a plane even if you beat me to death." Chi-Yu was wearing ordinary casual clothes, which were the clothes he had worn when he left the capital. This was the same outfit he had worn when he left the capital. When he arrived at Taklamakan, he had changed out of this outfit. Now that he had returned, he naturally changed back to his old outfit. Although only a month had passed, Chi-Yu was surprised to find that the clothes that were originally very fitting had become smaller and were completely stretched on his body. It felt very weird to wear them. Chi Yu did not know what changes had happened to his body, but he felt that he had definitely gained weight. Even he himself was very curious about how he could gain weight under the harsh conditions of the Taklamakan. Even he himself found it strange that he could gain weight under the harsh conditions of the Taklamakan. As for his height, it was definitely increased. Even if it was not 1.9 meters, it seemed to be not much different. However, when he thought about how much food he ate during each meal, he felt very satisfied. His original bronze skin color had deepened, showing a more healthy wheat color. This made Chi Yu very satisfied. It was much better than the purple and black people at that time. He recalled everything that had happened in the Taklamakan. Chi Yu couldn't help but reveal a faint smile in his eyes. Even the discomfort he felt from sitting on the plane seemed to have decreased a lot. For the first time, he was confident in his own strength. Ryue, just wait and see. I didn't waste this 1 month. Walking out of the airport, Chi Yu stretched his body hard. The bones in his body made a cracking sound, and there was a faint light in his eyes. He clenched his fists, and the veins on the back of his hands were exposed. Although only his hands were exposed, they exuded an explosive sense of power. Where should he go? Back to the Dragon Field courtyard? Anyway, this place was very close to the Dragon Field courtyard. Let's go back there first. With a plan in mind, just as Chi Yu was about to hail a taxi, he suddenly saw a familiar figure appear not far away from the corner of his eye. Chi Yu let out a soft cry of surprise, and his hand that was about to hail a taxi immediately stopped. Why was she here? Chi Yu subconsciously walked towards the familiar figure. Wearing a white down jacket and jeans, Shen Yun walked to the arrival gate and looked at the endless stream of passengers coming out of the airport hall. It was obvious that she was here to pick someone up. She was still the same as before, without any makeup on her pretty face. Her delicate face always gave people a gentle feeling. Someone once said that the most powerful thing about a woman was not her overbearing or barbaric nature, but her gentleness. Anyone who saw that gentle face of hers would probably feel a sense of pity and tenderness. Shen Yun was suddenly patted on the shoulder. She was startled and quickly turned around. When she saw the smile on the slightly tanned face, she couldn't help but exclaim, Chi Yu, why are you here? Chi Yu smiled and said, Why? Don't you want to see me? Why can't I be here? Shen Yun's gaze changed, as if she wanted to say something, but she couldn't say it. She lowered her head and said, Chi Yu, where have you been recently? I've been looking for you, but you disappeared. Chi Yu smiled and said, All right, don't think too much. You don't need to explain anything to me. I can understand everything that Qinger did. Don't worry, I'm a man. Although I felt quite sullen at the time, after so many days, my mood is much better. How are you guys? How's life at school? Shen Yun smiled bitterly and said, Not good, it can be said that it's very bad. Qinger harmed you and herself. Ever since you left, she seemed to have changed. She became quiet and taciturn. She is no longer the lively Qinger. She is no longer the Qinger from before. Thank you, Chi Yu. I didn't expect you to be so open-minded. Her gaze became even gentler. Only now did she notice the change in Chi Yu's body. In Shen Yun's eyes, although Chi Yu's appearance was still as ordinary as before, his temperament had changed greatly. Although Chi Yu's smile was still somewhat lascivious, and his gaze would also sweep across the wonderful parts of her body, the current Chi Yu always gave her a feeling that the essence was restrained. Compared to before, he had become somewhat unfathomable. Chi Yu shrugged his shoulders and said, Open-minded? I don't think so, but a lot of things have happened to me these days. Anyway, I'm not the type to study. Leaving Qing Bei might be a good thing. Why, did you come to the airport to pick someone up? Shen Yun smiled slightly and said, That's right. I came to pick up an elder of our family. What about you? Look at your appearance. You seem to have just returned from afar. Your complexion doesn't look good. Chi Yu smiled bitterly and said, It would be strange if my complexion was good. I'm afraid of heights. I really don't want to sit on a plane. Shin Yun hesitated for a moment and raised her head to meet Chi Yu's gaze. If there's a chance, let's have a meal together, okay? Although you don't mind, I hope to let Qing formally apologize to you. Otherwise, that matter will always have a grudge in your heart, and it will always be a shadow in Qing-er's heart. Chi Yu looked at Shin Yun. His feelings for Shin Yun had always been very good. Back when they had lived together. When they were living together, Shin Yun gave him the feeling of being at home. That was also the thing he was most reluctant to part with when he left Qing Bay. Looking at Shin Yun's expectant gaze, he sighed and said, Sister Yun, do you think this is necessary? Shin Yun lightly nodded her head and said somewhat imploringly, Count it as me begging you, okay? Chi Yu looked at her deeply and nodded his head. Since you think it's necessary, then fine. You choose the time. You have my phone number there. Shin Yun rolled her eyes at him and said, What's the use of having your phone number? You haven't turned it on for so long. Chi Yu laughed mischievously and said, From today onwards, I'll turn it on, at least for a period of time. I'm poor. I don't have money to pay the phone bill. Shin Yun unhappily said, All right, don't cry about being poor. Would a person like you be short of money? Chi Yu naturally knew what she was referring to. He did not reply and only looked at her with a smile. Shin Yun's expression changed. I'm telling the truth. Where have you been these days? You're not going to school in Qing Bay, then what will you do in the future? Work? Chi Yu, of course. If I don't work, what will I eat? I'll always be poor. I reckon that Ming Ming will be back soon in these few days. Call her when you ask me out, so that she won't misunderstand you guys. Shin Yun nodded her head and asked, Then what are you doing now? You haven't even graduated from university. If it's hard to find a job, I can. Chi Yu interrupted Shin Yun's words, shook his head and said, Thank you for your good intentions, but there's no need. I have my own way of life. Actually, my job isn't bad either. I'm an artist in the field of body art now. Shin Yun made a vomiting expression and said, You hooligan, you're still art. Chi Yu laughed out loud and said, Since you know, why are you asking me? However, I can't tell you my real job. Perhaps you'll find out in the future. Alright, I won't disturb you from picking up people. I'm leaving, you can continue waiting. Shin Yun's gaze revealed a trace of reluctance, but the person she was picking up today was indeed very important. She could only say, Alright then, I'll contact you in the next few days. Yun. A deep and aged voice caused Shin Yun to abruptly turn her head. Chi Yu's gaze also followed her to the source of the voice, only to see an old man walking out from the airport's main hall. He did not bring any luggage with him, and from his appearance, he seemed to be in his 60s or 70s. His short, grizzled hair was very thick, his face was ruddy, and his eyes were bright. His attire was very strange. He wore a black tang suit with yellow dragon-shaped embroidery, giving off an antique vibe. Grandfather, you're finally back. I've been waiting for a long time. Shin Yun cheered and hurriedly went forward to hold the old man's hand. The old man smiled slightly. After glancing at his granddaughter, his gaze turned to Chi Yu. Is this your friend? Shin Yun's pretty face turned slightly red as she said, Yes, his name is Chi Yu. Chi Yu, this is my grandfather. Chi Yu's heart skipped a beat. Could Shin Yun's grandfather be the head of the Shin family in the capital? Hello, grandfather. The old man nodded towards Chi Yu. Chi Yu could clearly feel a wave of pressure coming from the old man's body. The strange thing was that the pressure did not come from the front, but from all directions towards his body. It was as if he was trapped in a cage, and this cage was constantly shrinking. Slightly shocked, Chi Yu deliberately revealed a trace of panic. He staggered a step, and his face became even paler than when he first got off the plane. The pressure suddenly disappeared, and a trace of faint disappointment appeared in the old man's eyes. Chi Yu violently gasped for breath. He looked around and his face was full of panic. Sister Yun, I'll be leaving first. After calling out to Shin Yun, he hurriedly took his luggage and walked out of the airport. The old man frowned and said, Yun is he the Chi Yu you mentioned? Shin Yun nodded. Although her face was still as gentle as before, her eyes had become a bit colder. Grandfather, that's him. He's Kiran's successor. It seems that he's the same as his ancestors. Apart from being a symbol, Kiran only has a supporting role to the Zodiac Guardians. Grandfather, is he really worth the family's attention? The old man smiled indifferently and said, Yun don't look down on Kiran. Kiran's existence does not only have these two meanings. Not only can he help the other Zodiac Guardians become stronger, he's also the spiritual symbol of the Zodiac Guardians. Without Kiran, the Zodiac Guardians would have no soul. Originally, I only wanted you to get close to the chicken, but I didn't expect to catch such a big fish. You must always maintain a good relationship with him. This is very important to the future of our Shin family. Shin Yun nodded, and a faint light appeared in her eyes. She gently brushed her soft long hair and said, Grandfather, I'll do as you say. There's only a few days left before the exchange begins. When I saw Chi Yu just now, I felt that there were some changes in his body. If it wasn't for your probing, I would have thought that he had become stronger. The old man said, All right, let's go. Yun I don't care about the matter between you and Su Qing. However, as an important member of the family, as the most outstanding talent of your generation, I hope that you can put more effort into the future of the family. Shin Yun nodded respectfully and said, I will, grandfather. Chi Yu's guess was right. The old man that Shin Yun picked up was the head of the Shin family in the capital. His name was Shunjua, and he was one of the most outstanding heads of the Shin family. He had been practicing the Shin family's secret techniques for many years, and his strength was unfathomable. When Chi Yu left the airport, he was secretly shocked in his heart. Just now, he had deliberately shown weakness. Although he had a good impression of Shin Yun, Chi Yu's brain worked very fast. Although Shin Yun was his friend, the Shin family in the capital might not be friendly to the Zodiac Guardian warriors at the Eastern Guardian Exchange Conference. In this kind of situation, the deeper he hid, the better it would be. This was the first time he had eaten a tiger, and he couldn't help but feel a little funny in his heart. When Chi Yu returned to Longyu Courtyard, it was already noon. He didn't directly enter, but first gave Hai Ryue a call. Ryue, it's me. Of course I know it's you. My phone shows you. Chi Yu, where are you? Chi Yu smiled and said, Why don't you guess? When will Ming Ming and the rest come back? Hai Ryue said, They have already come back. I just picked up their plane today. What about you? You also have to come back quickly. The exchange conference is imminent. We must be prepared. Chi Yu smiled and said, Then open the door. So you also miss me? Hai Ryue was stunned and said, What did you say? You're already back? Then why can't I feel your aura? Chi Yu said, That's because you've regressed. My aura is very easy to conceal. I am now the powerful Kiran. Waha. While speaking, Chi Yu no longer hid his aura. The door of Longyu Courtyard opened, and Hai Ryue snappily said, You can be strong? I just didn't pay attention to your aura. Hurry up and get in. Entering Longyu Courtyard and looking at the familiar scenery in front of him, Chi Yu couldn't help but let out a long breath of relief. He breathed in the fresh air in the courtyard and strode towards the villa. When he was still about 100 meters away from the villa, the door of the villa had already opened, and a fat figure rushed out from inside. At the same time as the fat figure appeared, Vol's emotional voice sounded, Boss. Chi Yu's body was knocked by Vol's fat body and staggered. Damn Vol, you've become fat again. Didn't you eat vegetarian in Tibet? Although he said this, he hugged Vol's body tightly. Boss, when did you like this kind of thing? Don't tell me you've been lying on a mountain all this time? Yan Xiaoyi's teasing voice sounded. Following him out of the villa were Guan Ping, Ming Ming, Modi, and Hai Ryu. Seeing that Chi Yu had returned, even Hai Ryue's expression softened a lot. Hearing Yan Xiaoi's words, Vol hurriedly let go of Qi Yu's hands. His eyes flashed and he said to Qi Yu, "Boss, these days my mouth has been so bland. Why don't we have a feast tonight?" Qi Yu laughed and said, "Okay. Let's go eat mutton hot pot." After all, they had been brothers for many years. The two of them had a tacit understanding. "Damn, you're not allowed to eat mutton hot pot," Yan Xiaoi said with a face full of indignation. He was depressed. Why did he have to be a sheep? If it was a snake, it would be fine. At least it wouldn't be that easy to eat. Qi Yu laughed and said, "Eating mutton hot pot in winter is good. It's warm and nourishing." Yan Xiaoi smiled bitterly and said, "Boss, I know I was wrong. Just now, it was Vol who took the initiative. It has nothing to do with you. Boss, long time no see. You seem to have become more handsome. The word handsome seems to have appeared in the dictionary because of you." She smiled brightly as she looked at Qi Yu's smiling face as though he was about to vomit. Qi Yu looked at Yan Xiaoi and said, "All right then, we won't eat mutton hot pot. Vol, let's eat the usual. Didn't we eat there often before? Although it's winter, it's still enjoyable." Yan Xiaoi hurriedly agreed, "Yes, let's eat what boss usually eats." Vol nodded seriously and said, "All right. Boss, I want to eat mutton skewers too. Mutton tendon is fine too." Qi Yu said, "All right, it's my treat today. Let's also have some mutton penis. It's nourishing wherever you eat. Isn't that the most important part for a man?" "Damn." Yan Xiaoi was completely speechless. Hai Ryua said angrily, "All right, come in. Qi Yu, you're stirring up internal conflict as soon as you come back. You haven't even called me these days. Do you want to die?" Qi Yu pretended to be wronged and said, "Sir, I'm wronged. It's not that I don't want to call you, but there's no signal there. Didn't I go straight to the Dragon Field courtyard when I came back? I know you miss me. Come, give me a hug. I can comfort your young and fragile heart." As he said that, he opened his arms and walked towards Hai Ryua under the stunned gazes of the others. Hai Ryua snorted. She was wearing a skirt, so she didn't use her legs. She stretched out her right hand and an invisible airflow immediately blocked Qi Yu's body like a wall. "Qing Lai, your training didn't have any effect. How about I give you another one in a few days?" Qi Yu hurriedly withdrew his hand and said seriously, "Forget it, I've trained very well." "Sai, Ryue, you're so conservative. You won't even give me a hug." Guan Ping said, "You came back just in time. We were just about to eat. Ryue, let's eat." He was the oldest in the group. 10 minutes later, everyone came to the dining hall on the second floor. Hai Ryue knew that these guys could eat a lot, especially Qi Yu, so she prepared a lot of delicious food. "Since everyone is back, we should discuss the exchange meeting. Su Dong and I have reached a consensus that everyone should attend this exchange meeting. Although the four families are also the guardians of the East, our generation's Zodiac guardian god has just appeared, so they will definitely compete with us for the leadership of the guardians of the East. Therefore, although they won't really be hostile to us, they will definitely fight for the leadership of the guardians of the East. Therefore, although they won't be enemies with us, they will definitely provoke us. In these few months, the strength of our Zodiac guardian has greatly increased. During the exchange, I, Su Dong, and Guan Ping will be responsible for dealing with the opponent's provocations. Ming Ming, you and Modi will be responsible for protecting the weaker Yan Xiaoi, Vol, and Qi Yu. Our main goal is to leave a deep impression in the hearts of the guardians of the East. Although we can't make them surrender, we must show our strength." However, he had to display his strength. "We must not let them gain the upper hand." Modi said, "Ryue, I think this seems to be a dispute of personal feelings. We are all guardians of the East. Is the word name so important? Why do we need to mingle with the four great clans? Isn't it good to do our own thing?" Ryue shook her head and said, "Modi, it's not as simple as you think. Although each of us Zodiac guardian gods has our own abilities and will become stronger and stronger, there are only 12 of us. 13. Chiyu quickly added. Ryue glared at him and continued, All right, let's call it 13. However, you don't know how many things we have to do. Protecting the East is our priority, and protecting the East will inevitably cause us to clash with the Guardians of the West, and we will also have to face the beasts of the East itself. There are only 13 of us. Even if we are scattered to different places, it is impossible for us to solve all the problems. Therefore, we need helpers. At the very least, we need countless pairs of eyes to help us monitor the entire Yanhuang Republic. This way, we can better complete our mission. The four great families are the traditional guardians of the East, and their strength is much greater than we can imagine. Only when the guardians of the East unite as one can the Yanhuang Republic become an iron plate. Emochio nodded and didn't say anything else. Ryue said, There are still 10 or so days left. During these 10 or so days, everyone should stay here with me. We will cultivate together. There's something I can tell you right now. Although Chiyu was not very strong, he was not weak at all. However, as the king of the Zodiac, Kirin has a special meaning to all the Zodiac guardians. As long as he is here, our cultivation speed will greatly increase. As the symbol of our Zodiac guardian, Chiyu must attend this exchange meeting. Now, I want to remind everyone that no matter what the situation is, we must protect his safety. The four great clans weren't as united as a piece of iron. They are all selfish people. The people I sent out to investigate have returned. I will summarize and tell you the specific situation. After a pause, her gaze became much sharper. She swept her gaze across everyone's face and said in a deep voice, No matter what price we have to pay. Chiyu's heart warmed. When he sat down just now, he was next to Ming Ming. He avoided Ryue's gaze and whispered to Ming Ming, We haven't seen each other for so long. Did you miss me? He was just teasing her, but he didn't expect that Ming Ming would stretch out her hand from under the table and take the initiative to hold Chiyu's big hand. Her other hand gently wrote something on his palm. The itchy feeling made Chiyu's heart feel strange. After carefully analyzing it, it was 3 words. What do you think? Tilting his head, Chiyu glanced at Ming Ming. Ming Ming was also looking at him. The two looked at each other and smiled. Tianxiang Mountain, the highest peak of the western mountains of the capital. The peak was known as the Ghost Meets the Mountain. Although the actual altitude was not very high, it was already one of the highest mountains around the capital. As night fell, the setting sun floated down from the distance. Large red clouds stacked on top of each other. Looking from the top of the mountain, it had an otherworldly beauty. Normally, at this time, Tianxiang Mountain should have become very quiet. As the tourists left, the Ghost Meets the Mountain, which should have quieted down, had many figures. Tianxiang Mountain was one of the most famous parks in the capital. But for some reason, tonight it became especially lively, and the management staff of Tianxiang Mountain had completely disappeared. Mr. Shen, I have already let all the management staff of Tianxiang Mountain go home to rest tonight. No matter what happens, I hope there won't be too many changes in Tianxiang Mountain tomorrow morning. At the foot of the mountain, a middle-aged man in a suit, about 40 years old, respectfully said to another middle-aged man in a green tang suit, who was also about 40 years old. The middle-aged man in the tang suit, who was called Mr. Shen, nodded and said, I have troubled you this time. You can go now. Yes. Looking at the back of the middle-aged man in the suit, Mr. Shen smiled indifferently and said to himself, The opportunity one have waited for so many years has finally come. This time, the Shen family's opportunity is coming. The Zodiac Guardian God, the 4 big families are waiting for you. As he spoke, he slightly waved his hand. Dozens of figures flashed from all directions. Because their speed was too fast, it was impossible to see their appearance clearly. Like light smoke, they disappeared at the foot of Tianxiang Mountain. Chapter 49. A 5-meter-tall stone monument stood on one side of the mountain peak. The words Gui's Worry were engraved on the stone monument. the sky had already turned completely dark. Around the stone monument, black silhouettes quickly crisscrossed. When the black figures completely calmed down, the originally elegant atmosphere on the top of the mountain changed. A dignified feeling rose spontaneously, and even the air became a lot more oppressive. There was no light on the mountain, and today the moon was hidden behind the clouds. However, the top of the mountain was still bright. Green, white, yellow, and blue, 4 kinds of faint light appeared around the stone tablet. It was a smoke-like atmosphere. As the light flickered, it emitted a bit of dense air. With this not strong light, it could be clearly seen that there were 4 groups of people. Each group had the same number of 13 people. The leader was an old man, and behind him were 12 men and women of different ages. Mr. Shen, who was at the foot of the mountain before, was now standing in the second place among the people in green on the east side of the stone tablet. And standing in front of him was Shin Yun's grandfather, who was also the patriarch of the Shin family in the capital, Shinzhou. On the other 3 sides of the stone tablet, wearing clothes of different colors, were naturally the other 3 clans of the 4 oldest clans of the Eastern Guardian. Among all the Eastern Guardians there were many ability users, and with the passage of time, only the 4 clans had truly developed. The 4 clans had integrated the ordinary Guardian clans with themselves through intermarriage and various other strategies. Now, the overall strength of the 4 clans had occupied a decisive position in the Eastern Guardian. Therefore, today's exchange meeting between the Eastern Guardian and the Zodiac Guardian warriors. It could be called the exchange meeting between the 4 families and the Zodiac Guardian warriors. The 4 families each had different abilities, but they all had a main body. The Shun family in the capital represented the Eastern Jia-E wood. No matter what ability, there was the aura of the wood attribute ability. The Su family in Jiangsu represented the southern Bingding fire, the Zhou family in Guangdong represented the western Gung Xian metal, and the Luo family in the northwest represented the northern Rengui water. The 4 great clans had a long history, and each of them had a deep heritage. That year, when the 4 families first appeared, they were the same as the other Eastern Guardians. They were completely the vassals of the Zodiac Guardian warriors. Because they inherited the Zodiac's ability, the strength of the Zodiac Guardian warriors was much easier to cultivate than the ordinary Guardians. The ordinary Eastern Guardians completely supported the Zodiac Guardian warriors from the bottom of their hearts. But as time developed, when the 4 major families gradually appeared, this situation had gradually begun to change. The 4 major families were not like the Zodiac Guardian warriors, whose zodiac abilities and bloodlines could not be passed down casually. The various abilities they possessed would follow the zodiac and become the ability of the entire family. After many years of development, the strength of the 4 great families had gradually become stronger, and every time the Zodiac Guardian warriors appeared, they would need to cultivate for a long period of time before they could regain their powerful abilities. In this situation, the Zodiac Guardian warriors were not strong yet. Of the Zodiac Guardian of the Zodiac. The Zodiac Guardian warriors of Zodiac Guardian warriors. Guardian warriors of them. Guardians of Zodiac since. Of the Zodiac Guardian warriors of the Zodiac was. And from then, the Guardian warriors broke. There were not many people from the 4 great clans that came to Goswari, but they were all the elites of their clans. The 4 people standing at the very front slowly walked forward and arrived in front of the stone tablet. Luo Changxin, the patriarch of the northwest Luo family, smiled and said, "Brother Shun, we have come to your territory. Please take care of us." Luo Changxin, the patriarch of the northwestern Luo clan, who was dressed in blue, smiled and said, "Brother Shun, we've come to your territory this time, so please take care of us." Luo Changxin, the patriarch of the northwest Luo family, smiled and said, "Brother Shun, we have come to your territory. Please take care of us." He was the youngest of the patriarchs of the 4 families, but he gave people a very calm feeling. Shenjue looked at Luo Changxin and cursed in his heart. This old fox was testing him as soon as they met. He said calmly, "Our Shen family is also not willing to see what happened that time. In the catastrophe that happened more than 100 years ago, our 4 great clans all bear a great responsibility. When the current clan leader knew that things couldn't be reversed, it was already too late for regrets." At this point, he let out a long sigh, and a faint light appeared in his eyes. Su Chengyuan, the head of the Su family in Jiangsu province, said, "Although our 4 families are responsible for that incident, I think that it has a lot to do with the Zodiac Guardian God warriors not being strong enough. If they were strong enough, even if they were restrained by us, they wouldn't end up like that. Although the patriarch of that generation of the Su family ordered us not to make things difficult for the Zodiac Guardian warriors. But I think it needs to be discussed. After all, if the Zodiac Guardian warriors are strong enough, why should we compete with them for the position of Guardians of the East? The fundamental reason is because of their own strength." Su Chengyuan's face was red like fire. His aura was threatening, as if the aura around his body was burning. The red light emitted from his body was the most intense. In order to display the strength of each family, they all used their own attribute special abilities and released their energy. In such a situation, although it would consume their own energy to a certain extent, it also allowed the other families to see the strength of their own family. Su Chengyuan, the patriarch of the Su family, was obviously the most powerful of the 4 patriarchs, at least on the surface. Zhou Tianlu, the patriarch of the Zhou family of Guangdong, was the oldest of the 4 patriarchs. His white hair was neatly combed. He said indifferently, "Our 4 families help each other and advance and retreat together. Brothers, you don't need to spend too much effort. Let's do it according to the plan we discussed. We won't make things difficult for them like the previous generation, nor will we easily listen to their orders. Everything must be based on strength. If they have enough strength to lead us, the 4 families are not villains who only care about their own interests." Shenjue smiled and said, "Big Brother Zhou said it well. Since it's like this, let's go according to the original plan. More than 100 years have passed, and the whole world is in the midst of rapid development. With the advancement of technology, the gap in strength between us ability users and ordinary people has become smaller and smaller. Think about it, the various individual weapons developed by various countries are very advanced. Although our ability users are strong, if we encounter a large number of soldiers with individual combat weapons, it will not be easy. Therefore, we can't casually hand the fate of the 4 great clans over to the dozen or so Zodiac Guardian God warriors, at least not before they become strong enough. As far as I know, the Zodiac King of this world, Kirin, is actually a hooligan. How can we, the 4 great clans, listen to such a person? Little gangster." The other 3 patriarchs frowned at the same time and looked at each other. Zhou Tianlu said, "Younger brother Chen, have you already seen Kirin?" His voice had obviously changed a little. It was obvious that he had some suspicions towards Chenjue. Chenjue nodded his head and said, "That's right. I have already seen this generation's Kirin. In order to find him, I have mobilized a large amount of manpower and material resources of the Shen family. Recently, my granddaughter Yun found him. I have probed him before. This new Kirin is no different from the previous Kirin. In fact, he is not even as good as the previous Kirin. Think about it. How can a little ruffian work hard to cultivate?" It was also after discovering his existence that I took the initiative to initiate this exchange. The purpose is very simple. It is to let these Zodiac Guardian God warriors see the strength of our 4 great clans. Let them not think that our 4 great clans can only be their vassals. The relationship between the 4 great clans and the Zodiac Guardian God warriors should have long become equal. It should even be our 4 great clans who become the leaders of the Eastern Guardian God warriors. After so many years, The development of the four great clans cannot be compared to the Zodiac guardian god warriors who need to cultivate again every generation. We have powerful manpower, material resources, and financial resources. As long as our four great clans unite together, it is enough to contend against any enemy. Chunjwa's words could be said to have reached the hearts of the other three patriarchs. The three patriarchs nodded at the same time, approving his opinion. Luo Changxin took a look at the sky and said, "It's almost time. They should be here soon. Everyone disperse first." While speaking, he waved his hand to the clansmen behind him. The other three patriarchs also did the same action. More than 50 elites of the four great clans dispersed to the surroundings. The light on their bodies had also become a lot dimmer. Only the light reflected from the four patriarchs' bodies had become more intense. Although the four great clans were very unwilling to admit that they were the vassals of the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors and the Eastern Guardian God Warriors, the rules passed down from ancient times had always been a big stone in their hearts. Only by making the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors acknowledge their status would they be able to throw away the stone in their hearts. Therefore, the real purpose of holding this exchange was very simple. It was to use the strength of the four great clans to deter the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors who had just appeared, and whose strength was still not strong enough. Whether it was coercion or temptation, they would use various methods to make the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors surrender. At least, they would fight for equal status with the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors in the Eastern Guardian God Warriors. The sky was still so dark. Unknowingly, a large expanse of dark clouds had already filled the horizon. Just as the patriarchs of the four great clans were thinking about their own matters and waiting calmly, a change appeared. A loud and clear dragon's roar resounded in the sky. The distant sound carried a strong aura of a king. The dragon's roar covered the entire Gui's Jianzhou peak. The sound waves urged the clouds to roll over, without the slightest sign of stopping. The four patriarchs' complexion changed at the same time. With their strength, of course they could hear the huge and pure energy contained in this dragon's roar. Without energy as a foundation, even a dragon's roar could not shock their minds like it did now. Su Chengyuan, who was burning with anger, coldly snorted. He took a step forward, raised his head and roared towards the sky. His voice clearly carried a bit of provocation. The roar was deep and resonant. Under the binding of the fiery red energy, the sound waves pounced towards the clouds directly above the Gui's Jianzhou peak. When the dragon's roar and Su Ziyuan's voice came into contact, the two completely different sounds had a slight tremor. Immediately after, the dragon's roar was still so clear and impassioned, while Su Ziyuan's roar had slightly paused. Sound was also a form of expression of energy. The speed of contact was very fast. With just one collision, Su Ziyuan had already suffered a small loss. The other three patriarchs' complexion changed at the same time. They looked at each other and Chunjwa said, "The dragon is indeed the strongest among the Zodiac Guardian gods. However, it's just a dragon warrior, it's still not enough to contend against our four great clans." The three patriarchs' hearts were connected. They raised their heads and looked towards the sky at the same time. Three deep and resounding roars resounded at the same time, coordinating with Su Ziyuan's voice. Wood, fire, metal, water. The four types of energy were contained in the four long roars. That was not a simple amplification, nor was it as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. Wood, fire, metal, and water, under the combined effect of the four of them, completely displayed the relationship between each other. The four long roars, which seemed to be similar, complemented each other in the air. The sound waves combined and unexpectedly became exceptionally perfect. Almost at the same time that the four perfect sound waves appeared, a deep and low tiger roar accompanied it. It seemed like it contained the four types of energy of wood, fire, metal, and water. When the tiger roar appeared, the dragon's roar immediately became stronger. The dragon's roar and tiger's roar accompanied each other. Although they were obviously at a disadvantage, It was not easy for the patriarchs of the 4 great clans to suppress them. One in the air, one on the ground. The 2 fused sound waves continuously collided in the air. Every collision caused the entire Tianxiang mountain to tremble. The 2 sides had not yet met each other, but they had already started fighting. Although the dragon's roar and tiger's roar had weakened a lot, the wind in the air had changed. The originally dusky sky had become even more gloomy. Gusts of strong wind blew, causing the temperature of the mountain top to drop. The wind came from the dragon, and the clouds came from the tiger. The dragon's roar and tiger's roar changed the wind and clouds. 2 white silhouettes appeared in the midst of the wind and clouds. The white silhouette on the left had a layer of sparkling and translucent white scales. 2 large wings were unfolded on her back. The scales covered every part of her body. She had a white mask on her face. The mask was in the form of light and shadow. It looked somewhat illusory. The shape of the mask was exactly the same as her face. It only revealed a pair of eyes that shone in all directions. The mask covered every part of her body. The white scales continuously extended from her waist down to her short battle skirt that was only 8 inches long. Her upper body was also covered with thick scales like armor, outlining the perfect curves of her chest. In the center of her chest, a milky white bead the size of a ping-pong ball was constantly emitting waves of white light. She had a head full of strange blue long hair. Her long hair was draped over her back. There were 2 protrusions on the top of her head. The armor on her shoulders had a triangular shape. Her dragon's eyes were radiating light in all directions. They turned from blue to red like 2 rubies. They formed a sharp contrast with the white scales covering her entire body. She spread her arms to both sides of her body. The sharp claws on her fingers that were 3 inches long flickered with a cold light. Seeing the scales on the dragon's body, the patriarchs of the 4 great families felt a chill in their hearts. In the past, the 12 Zodiac guardian warriors had been recorded in detail in the 4 great families, including the situation after the Zodiac's original form had mutated. However, the Zodiac dragon warrior in the sky was very different from what they knew. Moreover, the degree of mutation of its original form was very high. From the mutation, it could be seen that this dragon warrior was very difficult to deal with. On the side of the dragon warrior, the tiger warrior, whose entire body was emitting a white halo and whose body was faintly covered with black lines, also had a pair of strange wings on his back. The tiger was originally the king of the land beast. Now that it had wings, it was like adding wings to a tiger. Although his aura wasn't as strong and overbearing as that of a dragon, the tiger's innate aura of a king was still filled with a mighty aura. The sudden appearance of the dragon warrior and tiger warrior, which were different from the past, immediately brought a great shock to the 4 great families. The roars stopped at almost the same time. The dragon warrior's red eyes and the tiger warrior's black eyes stared down at the dozens of members of the 4 great families. Chernjua took a step forward and said in a clear voice, "Since we've already arrived, why don't the 2 of you come down?" A cold voice came from the mouth of the dragon warrior. "The elites of the 4 great families are all here. Do you want to repeat what happened back then?" Following the voice, 2 white figures fell like meteorites and landed on the peak of Ghost's Worry Peak in the blink of an eye. The place where they landed was right in the middle of the 4 great clans. In terms of aura, they were even more powerful than the 4 great clans. Luo Changxin snorted coldly. The 4 great clans have never denied the mistakes of the past. In this exchange meeting, we, the 4 great clans, hope to have a sincere exchange with the Zodiac Guardian Warriors, and strive to cooperate with each other to complete what we, the Guardians of the East, should do. Hai Ryue cast a cold glance at Luo Changxin. "Do you mean you want to put the cart before the horse?" Since ancient times, the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors have always been the leaders of the Guardians of the East. Whether it was in the past or now, it is impossible for the 4 major families to stand on equal footing with us. Luo Changxin's words were originally just a test, but all the members of the 4 great families, including him, did not expect that the Zodiac dragon would actually reject the idea that they had been hoping for so directly. The light that had just weakened on the bodies of the four great families suddenly became stronger, forming a sharp contrast with the white light of the dragon and tiger in the center. The atmosphere suddenly became tense. Luo Changxin was about to say something. However, he was stopped by Shenjue. Shenjue smiled slightly and said, "Perhaps the exchange between us will be affected because of our different ideals. However, respected Zodiac Dragon Warrior, I think that the one who can represent the 12 Zodiac Guardian Gods should be the King of the Zodiac, Kirin." Hai Ryue sneered in her heart. Shenjue could be said to be a sly old fox. Once he saw that she and Su Dong were strong, he immediately changed the topic to Kirin, insinuating that he could not make decisions for the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors. Although Hai Ryue did not think that his actions would have any effect, she had to admit that Kirin was indeed the weakest point of the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors. Especially when the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors had just appeared. When Shenjue saw that Hai Ryue did not say anything, his eyes could not help but reveal a glimmer of light. "Respected Dragon Warrior, could it be that your Zodiac Guardian God Warriors look down on us so much? Even the King of the Zodiac, Kirin, did not come to participate in today's exchange? We, the four great families, are very sincere in our exchange with the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors. I hope that you will also show your sincerity. For the sake of peace in the East, our exchange is extremely necessary." Su Dong used his soft voice and said, "We, the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors, are also very sincere. Dragon and I are already here. How could Boss Kirin not come? He has been here for a long time, it's just that you did not notice him." Shenjue was shocked. There were so many experts from the four great families here, and they had been cautiously probing for any abnormal auras in the surroundings. He was confident that even an ability user stronger than him would not be able to avoid being detected by so many ability users. Of the East's wood attribute, Shenjue's wood attribute was extremely strong. Although his attack was certainly not as strong as the fire attribute of the South, he was able to communicate with the wood attribute aura of nature, making his detection much stronger. However, no matter how much he released his wood attribute energy, he could not detect any suspicious auras. His eyes revealed a trace of doubt. "Zodiac Tiger Warrior, you must be joking, right? Since your King of the Zodiac, Boss Kirin, is here, why don't you let him come out and meet us? Let us see if this generation's King of the Zodiac is worthy of our four great families submitting to him." Su Dong smiled, but his slightly lascivious smile was hidden behind the white mask, so the members of the four great families could not see it. "Boss, come out, lest the four great families say that we, the Zodiac Guardian Warriors, are unkind." As soon as he finished speaking, the space 5 meters in front of the four patriarchs suddenly distorted. In an instant, the four patriarchs all felt a unique aura. Under the illumination of the four elemental energy auras, a tall figure appeared out of thin air. The figure was over 1.9 meters tall and had broad shoulders. His entire body was wrapped in a dark red cloak, which was not very obvious in the night. Turning around, Chi Yu's face carried a trace of a mischievous smile as he nodded to the four patriarchs and said, "Hello everyone, it's an honor to meet the leaders of the four great families at the peak of Tianxiang Mountain." Chi Yu had indeed arrived a long time ago, even earlier than the four great families. Relying on Kirin's ability to conceal his aura, he had been quietly waiting since he arrived. He had clearly heard the conversation between the patriarchs of the four great families. It was only at this moment, when Su Dong pointed it out, that he retracted Kirin's concealment ability and appeared in front of everyone. The faces of the patriarchs of the four great families turned ugly. They naturally understood that since Chi Yu was able to appear here, he must have heard their conversation. Shenjue said in a deep voice, "Mr. Chi Yu, I didn't call you incorrectly, did I?" Chi Yu faintly smiled and said, "Of course. However, the Chun family didn't expend any manpower or resources to discover my existence. Miss Chin Yun and I accidentally met each other. That day, I met the patriarch of the Chun family. It really made Chi Yu admire him. After not seeing him for a long time, the patriarch looked even more hale and hearty. Hai Ryue and Su Dong each took a step forward and stood on either side of Chi Yu, faintly protecting him in the middle. Luo Changxin said, "Since the Zodiac King has already arrived, then our exchange can also begin." The patriarchs of the four great families were very experienced in society. After a short period of shock, they quickly returned to normal. But their gazes all fell on the cloak on Chi Yu's body. Even if they used their feet to think, they could still figure out that the reason why Chi Yu was able to conceal his figure and aura was naturally inseparable from the ability of the cloak on his body. Especially Shinjua. He had once carefully probed Chi Yu's ability. In his impression, Chi Yu's strength was far from enough. Chi Yu shrugged his shoulders and said, "It doesn't matter. Actually, I don't understand what the four great families and our Zodiac Guardian have to communicate. Since everyone is the Guardian of the East, we should help each other. I think this is good. We also don't need to waste time saying those hypocritical words. Since the four great families are not willing to submit to our Zodiac Guardian and do not believe in the strength of our Zodiac Guardian warriors, then I ask the four great families to send out their strongest warriors. In that case, let's ask the four great families to send out their strongest expert, and our Zodiac Guardian God Warrior will also send out one. Let strength speak for itself." Looking at the ruffian look on Chi Yu's face, the four patriarchs couldn't help but look at each other. Looking at the ruffian look on Chi Yu's face, the four patriarchs couldn't help but look at each other. The eldest Zhou Tianlu said, "Since the Zodiac King is so straightforward, then we won't say anything else. Using strength to solve problems is indeed the best way. But before that, I have something to say first. More than 100 years ago, when the Yanhuang Republic was in dire straits, our four great families dragged the Zodiac Guardian warriors down, causing decades of turmoil in Yanhuang. Our four great families have dragged the Zodiac Guardian warriors down, causing decades of turmoil in Yanhuang. This matter, our four great families feel deeply regretful. Here, on behalf of the four great families, I express my deepest apologies to the Zodiac Guardian warriors. I hope that you can forgive the actions of our ancestors at that time. We are also willing to repent for the short-sightedness of the four great families at that time." Hearing Zhou Tianlu's words, Chi Yu couldn't help but have a good impression of him. He nodded and said, "Although I'm not cultured, I also understand the principle of knowing one's mistakes and being able to correct them. This matter is already in the past. As long as you sincerely admit your mistakes, we will not pursue it." Hai Ryue hurriedly said, "Chi Yu, this matter." Chi Yu raised his hand to stop Hai Ryue and said, "I know what I'm doing." His expression suddenly became abnormally serious. From his face, Hai Ryue saw an unprecedented seriousness. Even her dragon's domineering aura was completely suppressed by Chi Yu at this moment. Chi Yu only glanced at her lightly, but Hai Ryue could clearly feel that she seemed to have become shorter in front of Chi Yu. The four patriarchs of the four great families revealed a trace of a smile at almost the same time. Zhou Tianlu was just about to speak, but he heard Chi Yu say, "Don't thank me for forgiving you. The Zodiac Guardian warriors have never blamed you for anything. In this world, no one should be anyone's subordinate. It's not like the old traditions can't be broken." Chi Yu. This time, even Su Dong couldn't help but shout to remind him. Chi Yu ignored Su Dong and continued, "However, our Zodiac Guardian warriors can forgive everything that the four great families have done in the past. However, the four great families should be responsible for the serious consequences that were caused by you restricting the Zodiac Guardian warriors more than 100 years ago. Countless ordinary people lost the protection of the Zodiac Guardian warriors and fell into abyss of suffering. A simple apology from the four great families is probably not enough to make up for everything that happened in the past. At the same time, it is meaningless for you to seek the forgiveness of our Zodiac guardian warriors. What you need to strive for is the forgiveness of the descendants of Yen and Huang. At the last few words, Qi Yu's voice became low and the light in his eyes became much sharper. The four patriarchs' expressions changed, but they found that they actually had no words to refute Qi Yu. Even now, when they thought of the disaster caused by the catastrophe more than 100 years ago, they still felt extremely depressed. Qi Yu was not wrong at all. It was more than 100 years ago that the foreign invaders brought harm to the descendants of Yen and Huang. How could a simple apology from them solve the problem? The hot-tempered Su Ziyuan asked, "Then what do you want us to do? Do you want the four great families to commit suicide together to get the forgiveness of the descendants of Yen and Huang?" Qi Yu snorted disdainfully. "What's the big deal about death? Death is a kind of release. People will die eventually. No matter how powerful they are, they will one day step into the yellow earth. It's actually not difficult to get the forgiveness of the descendants of Yen and Huang. With the current strength and power of the four great families, you can make up for the mistakes of the past in many ways. Instead of making things difficult for our Zodiac guardian warriors, you might as well put your energy into benefiting the East. Only by continuously benefiting the East can you gradually make up for the mistakes you made in the past. As for now, if the four great families sincerely admit their mistakes, then you can face the East and kowtow to the deceased descendants of Yen and Huang in front of the Zodiac guardian warriors 3 times. What did you say? You actually want the four great families to kowtow in front of the Zodiac guardian warriors? A man from the Chen family angrily rebuked. This middle-aged man in his 40s was precisely the Mr. Chen who was previously at the foot of the mountain. Qi Yu didn't even look at him and said to Chen Zhua, "The four great families have good rules." Chen Zhua's face sank and said, "Don't be rude." Qi Yu actually didn't know that the one who angrily rebuked him was Chen Yun's biological father, Chen Yu. Zhou Tianlu looked at Qi Yu and said, "With the mistakes the four great families made in the past, kowtowing is not a problem. I also think that what you said is very right. Instead of repenting for the mistakes of the past, it's better to make up for it now. In fact, our four great families have always been doing this. However, today is the day for us Eastern Guardians to interact with each other. This kowtow form is not needed." Qi Yu coldly snorted and said, "Is this your sincerity? Well, it's still the same as before. You send out the strongest one, and our Zodiac Guardian warriors will also send out one. Whoever wins will occupy the dominant position. How about it?"